We are ready, right? Good evening, everyone. We're ready to get underway. It's I think it's 7:01 by my old cell phone clock. If we could ask for a roll call, please, Mrs. Amatrano. Did I get that right? Yes. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Glenn Shibley.
I'm present.
Greg LeBoissonniere.
Present.
Kerry McGee. Karen Carlson.
Here.
Deborah Bacon.
Here.
Stephen Delaney.
Present.
Nicholas Gorham.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Spearman, if you'd be so kind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and while we're still standing, Colonel McDonald, you have a guest, Reverend Pastor Priest. Okay, to bring us the invocation, sir, and we appreciate it.
Let's call to mind that we're in God's presence and ask for Him to bestow on us His abundant blessings. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask that you open up our hearts and our minds that we may follow your will, that we may lead this community in justice and in truth, so that we may serve those who are in need of service, that we may protect those who are in need of protection, and that we may guard those who are in need of your guidance. We ask this and all things through the intercession and through the work of your mighty hand. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. And Mr. Spearman, if you could lead us on, guide us on the emergency evacuation plan. I'm getting into it. Thank you, Mr. Spearman. It was a good Mother's Day, Jim, for the Boston fans. I hope everybody did have a good Mother's Day. Or Grandmother's Day, or about to be Mother's Day. President's comments. We have just a few, not too many. First, I'd like to, I might have mentioned this past meetings, but commend our Coventry Police Department for their excellent work, and also thank the public for their assistance and information provided that led to the arrest of 5 individuals dated the 28th of April, participating in selling cocaine, having firearms, vehicles that have also been confiscated. 4 out of the 5 residents are Coventry residents, the 5th person being an East Greenwich resident. As we all know, drugs and drug problems and the ensuing problems are ever present. And we're just, again, I, as council president, and on behalf of our council and our town, thank the officers at a 1-month investigation, and especially to thank the public, again, providing the information that led to the arrests and the assistance. Without the public, again, it's a much, much tougher job for law enforcement. So that I wanted to acknowledge. This Saturday, May 19th, I also want to acknowledge, a lot of us know that it's National Armed Forces Day. Many of us know individuals that have served in the past. Many of us know individuals that are currently serving in the present. And also, we know individuals that are considering serving in the future. So Saturday, May 19th, if you know a veteran or someone in the military, please thank them and pay tribute to them on Saturday, this coming Saturday. May 15th, tomorrow, is also a special day. It's the National Police Officers Memorial Day. Every year, May 15th is the day that officers that have been lost their lives in the line of duty, whether it has been through a shooting, stabbing, or traffic accident, are honored down in Washington, D.C. at the National Monument. Tomorrow is the day. Last year, if I'm not incorrect, we lost 133 police officers, died while serving their communities, their nations, and their states and nation, which is obviously far too many. And unfortunately, this year, I think we're on track to, and hopefully not, surpass that number. It's not getting any easier out there for our law enforcement and our citizens living in our country. And lastly, President's comments, our Memorial Day, United States Memorial Day, as we all know, will be observed on Monday, May 28th. And thus our regular town council meeting will be the following day, Tuesday, May 29th. And that's a day, Memorial Day, we all honor it in our own way. I generally get down to the Veterans Cemetery in Exeter myself. But however you pay tribute to our fallen service individuals, May 28th. Okay, that's it for President's comments. Next, we have on the agenda approval of town council minutes. And just we're making a note that the minutes for the April 16th were not quite completed as the packages went out to us. And in fairness, I believe they were finished this morning, but to give us time, we will receive them shortly, and then we'll take them up at the following council meeting. So at this time, let's take April 9th town council minutes, several pages in it, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of April 9th at this time.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, any discussion?
I found just two
Okay.
small things. One of them was, I must have been channeling you, I saw a grammatical error. Page 7, at the top where it's a second sentence there. It says they're limited, it should be they are limited instead of there.
Oh, they are.
And then I noticed on page 8, there was a point of order by someone that you listed as Mary Vanderbilt. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Mary Vandervelde. She's a teacher.
Okay.
Unless Mary Vanderbilt was actually here, so I don't know. But I don't think so. I think it was Mary Vandervelde.
And the spelling we can get, might you know that? We can check. Okay. All right. Any other?
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
But anyway, those are the two
Okay,
things that I
thank you.
spotted.
Anyone else? And if not, then with those two noted changes, the spelling of Mary's last name on page 8, and then they are or their abbreviated apostrophe R-E, we could do it that way too. Do a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Okay. Now, on the minutes of April 23rd, not quite as voluminous. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes for the April 23rd? All right. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, thank you. Next. Council district updates. Mr. McGee, why don't I start down on my far right?
Just thank you for the DPW for taking care of the streets. Our district was pretty much.
Mike, microphone.
Sorry about
Unless
that.
your name is Mike, they want you to turn on your...
Mike. District 3 is pretty much to the end of their street sweeping, so it's coming out nice. Did a good job. So that's all I have. Everything else is going pretty smooth in District 3.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Bacon, District 5, please.
I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Mrs. Carlson, District 1.
Couple of short things. For those of you who may be interested in running for office this year, obviously 2018 is an election year. We have 2 seats open on the council, and we will have various state office seats that are open. The deadline to submit your name is June 27th at 4 p.m. here at Town Hall. And the Rhode Island Secretary of State has a really good informational booklet available online. So take a look at the RISOS site. Number 2 is the insanity going on at the soon-to-be someday roundabout at 117 and 102. Please be very careful. There are even new lines today that I noticed. There's no roundabout, but the lines are all squiggly and going everywhere. So just be really careful. I've talked to DOT. I thought they were going to do something about the stop signs versus the yield signs, and they still haven't done it, so I will make another couple phone calls. But just know that north and south on 102, for some reason there's a yield sign which doesn't work until you have a roundabout. 117 east and west have stop signs, but everybody's confused, so just be careful. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. LeBossiniere, District 2.
Just noticed that Hunter's Crossing started getting some street sweeping and a few other streets. Other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay, District 4. One thing I'm wondering, and I don't know if we have the answer on the leave bag pickup. I've received a lot of calls on that, and maybe Mr. McGee, you can fill me in on that, or maybe a truck's down, but certainly Oak Haven has not been picked up for a couple of weeks, so just that note. And on a good note, we have the Bean Barn Coffee House has been open now for a few weeks, located at 599 Tioga Avenue. They have a terrific menu. I encourage everyone to stop in. They've really renovated the inside of it. They have breakfast specials, sandwiches, pizzas, soups, all kinds of coffees, cold drinks, panini sandwiches, and they're doing, to me, after a couple of weeks passing it daily, they're really doing a good business, which is good to see. I went in today and grabbed a menu, and they said I could take it and keep it and mention it tonight. So they also have a website, which is beanbarnri.com, if anybody wanted to go on to it. But let's wish them well, a new business here in Coventry and in District 4. So that's all I have on my district report. And next, we have a very pleasurable item on the agenda as a police officer promotions and acknowledgement. So, Colonel McDonald, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
Sana. I know it's hot. It's going to be a long meeting, so we're going to try to be expeditious here. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council, Mr. Delaney, Mr. Gorham, Ms. Samatrano, and Ms. Lavoie, friends, family, members of the community that have come out tonight. I'd like to recognize Chief Frank Brown here and Senator Raptakis as well. Thank you for coming. During tonight's ceremony, we'll call forward each officer and read a short bio on each. After all the officers are on stage, our town council president will come forward to swear them in. Our newly promoted officers will be sworn in, as well as a new recruit. And then once the swearing in is done, we'll have a pinning of the badge ceremony, which a family member will come up and pin them. And after that, we're going to recognize some of our emergency management team for their exemplary service and dedication to the town. So without further ado, I'd like to call up our first officer, Sergeant Paul W. Kelly. Please come forward. Sergeant Kelly is a graduate of LaSalle Academy in Rhode Island College, where he received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Justice Studies. He graduated from Rhode Island Municipal Police Academy in March of 2008 and has served in the Patrol Division since. He's been a field training officer for our department, and he's attended the school resource officer training. Sergeant Kelly is a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, medevac, correct, with the Rhode Island Army National Guard. He's been deployed twice to the Middle East, serving in Afghanistan and Iraq. Prior to his promotion, Sergeant Kelly served in the Patrol Division on the 4 to midnight shift. He was temporarily assigned as an acting sergeant on November 5th, 2017, and was promoted to sergeant on January 7th, 2018, which we recognize tonight. Detective Pedro M. Vieira, please come forward. Detective Vieira is a graduate of West Warwick High School and received his associate's degree from the Community College of Rhode Island. He graduated from the Rhode Island Municipal Police Academy in December of 2006 and has served in the Patrol Division since. Detective Vieira is a prior instructor with the Coventry Police Department's Explorer program. He's a prior member of the Coventry West Warwick Regional SWAT team. And he's also a defensive tactics instructor and a field training officer. On Monday, February 12th, 2018, Officer Vieira was selected to become a detective with the effective transfer date of Sunday, May 13th, 2018, which we recognize tonight. Officer Justin L. Favreau, please come forward. Officer Favreau is a graduate of South Kingstown High School. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in sociology and a minor in political science from the University of Rhode Island. Officer Favreau was a URI football team co-captain in 2014, earning all-conference third team in 2014, and was a 4-year letterman with the team. He graduated from the Rhode Island Municipal Police Academy on December 15th, 2017, which we recognize tonight. I'd ask President Shibley to come forward to do the swearing in.
Good evening, gentlemen. You could raise your right hand at this time. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful unto this state and support the laws and Constitution thereof, and the Constitution of the United States of America, and that you will well and truly execute the office of Sergeant, Detective, Police Officer for the Coventry Police Department, to which you have been appointed in and for said town of Coventry, Rhode Island, so help you God. Congratulations.
We are very proud tonight to have members of each officer's family here to perform the ceremonial pinning of the badge. Someone of special significance to the officer is chosen to perform this age-old tradition when the officer is first hired to our agency or when an officer is promoted to a position of higher rank. Sergeant Kelly tonight will be pinned by his wife Rebecca and their daughter Paige. She's doing good. Watch that step. Detective Vieira will be pinned by his fiancée, Vanessa Calcagni. Officer Favreau will be pinned by his father, retired Narragansett Police Sergeant Jerry Favreau. Take a seat, gentlemen. Tonight, we'd also like to recognize several employees for excellence in emergency management. I'd like to call forward Dispatcher Lee Bissett and our MIS Coordinator Mike Brogy. I'd also like to call forward Deputy EMA Director Chief Frank Brown to help with the presentation, and our EMA Assistant Ray LaPrat. Tonight, we recognize both Lee Bissett and Mike Brogy for their outstanding and dedicated service to our town's emergency management program. I'll read a short bio on each one, but it only scratches the surface of their many contributions. Communications Dispatch Lee Bissett. Dispatcher Bissett has been with the Coventry Police Department since February of 1999. In addition to being the most senior dispatcher, he's also taken on the duties of maintaining our radio system to include the base station, portable radios, and off-site radio tower locations. He is an integral part of our emergency management team. Lee is always on hand to lend practical and trustworthy guidance in situations in emergency management that require time and on-target solutions. Lee has vast experience in doing more with less, ensuring that communications mission performs at the highest level. He has contributed to the town's emergency management efforts by providing backup VHF and ham radio capabilities so that alternate means of communication are always available. During every weather emergency, Lee can be found making sure the town has the means necessary to effectively communicate with the state and local partners in emergency management. Lee was instrumental in our town achieving Storm Ready ranking by the National Weather Service. Facilities, Cybersecurity, and Technology Manager, Mike Brogy. Mike Brogy joined the Coventry Police Department in March of 2008 as the MIS Coordinator, but he's grown to become the proverbial go-to person. He has taken on numerous other duties to include equipping new department vehicles and maintaining vital equipment such as the message trailer and Marine Patrol unit. He participates in the School Safety Committee, the Traffic Committee, the Emergency Management Communications Team, and the New Building Committee. Mike ensures our internet technology works to full capacity and that this technology gets immediate attention when it fails. He is well versed in local and national weather forecasting operations and can be counted on to provide the town with accurate predictions so that response efforts are in tune to what we should expect. Mike's intricate knowledge of IT systems at our department helps us with staying functional during power outages and avoids infrastructure failures and situations where we find ourselves in less than optimal communications environments. Mike has always a step ahead, making solid and wise suggestions when we need a solution to an IT problem. Mike and Lee are the backbone of our emergency management team. They've been that way for a decade. On behalf of our emergency management team and a grateful citizenry, I thank you both for your continued efforts to make our town safe and prepared for the next emergency. In closing, I'll echo our President's remarks. Tomorrow we recognize Peace Officer Memorial Day, which is held annually in the United States on May 15th to honor federal, state, and local officers killed or disabled in the line of duty. It is observed in conjunction with Police Week. The Coventry Police Department, along with many government agencies, will be displaying the United States flag at half-staff for the entire day in honor of Peace Officers Memorial Day. Even though we've seen a recent reduction in the line of duty deaths, the 133 officers who lost their lives in 2017 is a stark reminder to us that public safety comes at a very steep price. We must never take the service and sacrifice of our law enforcement professionals for granted, nor can we ever forget the officers who died and their families who continue to feel that loss. On that note, I'd like to have Chaplain Father Fleming come up and perform the benediction.
I ask that everyone please be upstanding. Heavenly Father, we thank you for those men. We ask a particular blessing over them and their families and all who serve, that they may be protected, that they may govern well, and that they may be guided by your Spirit. We ask this all through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Congratulations to our new officers, our newly promoted, and our awardees tonight. This concludes our swearing-in ceremony. Thank you for attending. I'll turn it back to the council.
Colonel, we have a little refreshment break out there?
Sir.
Yes?
Some
Okay.
refreshments in the hall.
Okay, so at this time, to join in the celebration, we'll take a 10-minute break, and you're welcome to help yourself to the refreshments out there and say hi to our newly promoted and hired police officers. So about 10 minutes will be sufficient, and then we'll come right back in and continue on with our agenda meeting. Good evening again, everyone. Thank you for the pause to celebrate the newly promoted officers. It's occasions like that that make one of the things that make the council, being on the council, so pleasant is seeing the good promotions and our good officers, and it doesn't happen. It was on. Okay. Seeing the good officers promoted. All right, so next we have a presentation of a report prepared by Citrin Cooperman, next on the agenda, and we ask those to be seated so we can get underway. And Mr. Delaney, I guess we'll have you do the introduction, or as we get started, or Mr. Warzika, whoever wants to start.
This is an update from Citrin Cooperman on as they've examined the issues related to the sewer account, and I'm pleased to have Mitzi Hollenbeck here with us tonight to offer this update and report on her work thus far. I think this is a huge first step, a major step in terms of understanding this project and all of the intricacies with it, and so I'm looking forward to Mitzi's presentation this evening. So I'll turn it right over to Mitzi. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for having me here. Thank the council and the residents as well. I'll try to make sure that I'm speaking into the microphone. I'm sitting down so that I can address any other particular issues or questions that happen to come up with regard to some of the financial information to the council. So I'm going to start with the presentation and just give an overview, if I actually do this the right way. And we'll talk about exactly what we've done so far. So for the agenda tonight, I'm going to just discuss exactly the status of the project. I'm going to give an update regarding our work that we've been having with the Auditor General. We've been meeting somewhat regularly since the beginning of April, or at least been in constant communication with the Auditor General. And so I will address that as far as what that did to regarding the scope of the project as well. I'm going to give a little bit of history on enterprise accounting for the sewer fund. I'm going to try to keep it less accounting and technical and try to give a little bit of a high-level overview as to what has happened through the financials on your enterprise fund, your sewer enterprise fund. And I'm going to go over an overview of the construction costs to the assessments from the history of the enterprise fund, and I will explain exactly why we're going back to the beginning of the enterprise fund and not to the beginning of the actual sewer program, because I'll explain exactly what happened with the financial records. There were some large changes in governmental accounting, which meant that you had some commingled items prior to really 2003, 2004. So I can address those issues as well. And then I'm going to go for an overview of the user rates to the operating expenses as they stand right now, and we'll talk about the next steps. I am terrible at this. That figures. Okay, so we're going to talk about the project status. So I really should sit the other way, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't with my back to everybody. So the timeline and status. So we originally came here in front of the council for a presentation on January 8th, 2018. There was a delay in the signing of the engagement letter, which the engagement letter was not signed until January 31st, 2018. That was due to likely just a miscommunication or a confusion regarding what the scope of services would happen to be. Then we had our initial conversation with the existing town manager at the time. We had that during the week of February 5th immediately. We also spoke with Ed as well, and Ed has been great through this entire process. And we set up our initial meeting for February 7th. That meeting got postponed to February 14th, which then further got postponed to February 21st. So the initial meeting that we had here at the town offices happened on February 21st. At that point in time, we left that meeting where we gave an information request of the information that we wanted to review, and that information was received by us in mid-March. There was a little bit of a miscommunication that wasn't uploaded until the beginning of March, but we didn't exactly know that it had been uploaded at that time, so we received that information in mid-March. At the beginning or the end of March and the beginning of April, we were informed that the Auditor General was going to be looking into what was happening in the sewer fund. So at that point, we were told by the town manager that the Auditor General would be contacting us, that we should wait and coordinate our efforts with the Auditor General, which we did. We then were in touch with the Auditor General. That resulted in a little bit of a scope change, which we then communicated back to Ed and to the town solicitor regarding your immediate needs here with regard to your financial town meeting coming up and what the cash flow situation looked like for the immediate near term, as opposed to really focusing on the long-term picture, although we had already started to gather that information. I'm presenting some of that as well tonight. During the interim, of course, we also had the departure of the town manager and the departure of the finance director. So gathering information has been a little bit more difficult than what was initially anticipated, but we have managed to pull some information together. With regard to the information that we reviewed, we did go back to the 1983 IMA, which really was somewhat of the inception of the relationship with West Warwick, and we followed that through the 1999 IMA, the 2003 IMA amendments, the proposed 2010 IMA amendment and the user charge, a lot of the different documents, the sewer ordinances, and we went through the audited financial statements back from 1991 all the way through 2017. The 2017 statements we received today from the Auditor General, so we did review those in conjunction with the presentation or the preparation for the presentation tonight. Some of the information we did not review was related to the construction costs. The construction costs have been put into the enterprise fund through a number of different ways. We have the capital costs. They've been audited by your outside auditor. Those are the numbers that we're working on. In addition to that, any capital asset invoices, we didn't necessarily go back and verify them because we derived the information from your audited financial statements. So again, we did a number of different analyses regarding the inception of the enterprise fund from 2003, 2004 to 2017. We had a number of different meetings. We met with the collector, treasurer as well, and we had some great conversations there. And we will have some additional information to gather from you depending upon where you want to go with this after tonight. So at the beginning of April, we were informed of the Auditor General's request that they wanted to work together with us to at least find out the information that we were working on, because the request had come through from the state level regarding the overview of the enterprise fund. So on April 19th, 2018, we had our initial meeting with the Auditor General. That was when we were made aware of a lot of the pending legislation at the General Assembly that may tie your hands with regard to what you're able to do with the enterprise fund moving forward and with the sewer program. So again, that was the conversation that then caused us to reach out to both Nick and to Ed to talk about changing the scope to look at what your immediate needs were right now, because you were facing a number of different deadlines and you're facing your budget, and now you didn't have a finance director, you didn't have a town manager, and so we changed the scope at that point. On April 27th, that was when we met with the collector. We talked about the collections, the assessments. We gathered a lot of additional information from there. And then the result from that was really an analysis of the short-term cash flow and an analysis of the system. So the first slide I'm going to show you here is the short-term enterprise fund potential cash flows under scenario 1. And under this scenario, what we have minimum sewer assessments, which are based upon a sewer assessment aging of the existing assessments that are currently in place and have been collecting by the taxpayers. So the average assessments coming in, it's $900,000 for fiscal year 19, 20, and 21. That's based upon an aging of the remaining assessments that haven't been paid over a 20-year period. The sewer use fees, what we did is we took a look at the existing sewer use fees, and we projected with a small 5% increase what those use fees would look like based upon history and additional users potentially coming onto the system or having a slight increase in the use fees. You have $1.4 million for 2019, 1.5 for 2020, and 1.6 for 2021. We looked at the operating expenses, also did a slight projection. There was not a lot to go off of. The operating expenses, the main component of them, happens to be a contract with Weston and Sampson that you have along with the pass-through debt that you have for the West Warwick plant. So in 2019, we have $1,750,000, $1,008,000, and $1,850,000. The debt service requirements that you have on your existing debt, which as of 2016 and 2017 was approximately $19.4 million on the enterprise fund debt, is $2 million a year for the next 3 years. That leaves you a current cash shortfall looking to fiscal year 19, 20, and 21 of $1,450,000, $1,400,000, and $1,350,000. What we did secondarily to that is we looked at whether or not, since we were unable to necessarily ascertain the total assessments, they were close to the assessment receivables. We wanted to say if you had average assessments collected over the past 10 years, which might include new assessments where people are paying them off immediately as opposed to paying them off over time, what would that look like? And we took a conservative average by saying that the average assessments received over the past 10 years was $1.6 million, and that we put into the spreadsheet as well. The same use fees with the same assessment increase that we put on there, the same operating expenses and the same debt service requirements. If that was the higher end of the assessments coming in, we would have a cash shortfall of $750,000, $700,000, and $650,000 in 2019, 20, and 21. Again, the number that we're using for the sewer assessments there, that would be the average that was collected over the past 10 years. That is probably a best case scenario because we don't have any new assessments really that are coming out. There are some, but they're not nearly as significant as they were at certain times when people were paying off the entire assessment up front. So this slide explains a little bit of what we discussed when we were talking about potential scenarios that could mitigate some of these cash flow issues in the short term when we were talking with the Auditor General. And these are not necessarily things that we're going to recommend, but these are items that were made and brought to our attention as to elements that you may have been considering at the time. The West Warwick debt, which currently exists and is approximately $7.3 million sitting on the books of West Warwick. The current payments for those are actually going through your operating expenses of your enterprise fund, and they account for approximately $682,000 each year. There was a consideration of moving those expenses over to the general fund to pretty much alleviate short-term cash flow to have the general fund pay those expenses. I want to just emphasize that those expenses are actually being paid by the users on the system. So the revenue that's coming in for $682,000 on those debt payments is actually part of your user fee revenue that's in the previous slide. Then the other option that was considered was you're looking at a conduit bond of $6,505,000. Along with the Auditor General, we talked with them today to confirm whether or not that had been executed. It has not been executed yet. That is a potential refinance of a previous $8,225,000 bond. You've paid off approximately $1.4 million on that debt. That the concept was to repay or to refinance that, which would then have 3 years of interest-only payments along with a principal payment of $1,000 each. What that would do is in years 4 through 11, you would have additional principal payments and interest payments that would total $680,000 per year. So it's really just deferring the inevitable payment on those that you can defer it by approximately 3 years. What that would be is about $290,000 each year for the debt service on that, as opposed to the $783,000 that you're currently paying each year on that bond. So in doing that, if we were to move the general fund payments, the debt service payments for West Warwick over to the general fund, you, in theory, would have an operational cash flow that would be positive of approximately $332,000 and $380,000 and then $428,000 in fiscal year 2021. That's only on the operating component, which we looked at it and kind of broke out between what your debt service payment requirements would be versus your assessments and what your user fees are compared to your operating expenses. It's somewhat important. We believed it's important to differentiate between the two. One is really related to the overall construction costs. The other is related to your ongoing operating assessments. I'm going to give a little accounting history lesson. From inception to 2003, Coventry utilized a sewer tax fund and a capital projects fund to account for the construction costs related to the sewer fund, as well as the revenue that was coming in. That was all somewhat intermingled with the general fund. So the records prior to that are not easy to distinguish between what the amount was prior to 2003. In 2003, there was a new accounting pronouncement that came out, which is GASB Statement Number 34, which presents the financial statements in the way that you currently see them today, which looks more like a business enterprise's financial statements. And so that is really, at the inception of that, you had an adjustment onto your statements of $11.6 million of capital assets back in 2003 for construction costs and wastewater treatment costs. On top of that, you had a $6 million TAN, tax anticipation note, along with $3.4 million, which was your first bond that you took out on this project from that inception. And that included the $6 million grant revenue for the AmGen line and the fast track line that was put in. So prior to 2003 as well, the system that was being used to account for the fund itself was really a checkbook. And then the information really hadn't been transferred onto your central system prior to that period in time. It was on a separate system. And information even prior to that actually was destroyed with a sewer backup. So those, ironic. But then there was an adjustment to the enterprise fund in 2005 when everything went into that fund. So some open items related to the accounting methods that we have here. Because of the way that your accounting is structured and how you've been doing some of your accounting, any grant funding requests that we were able to see some of that information where it showed a grant coming in, we weren't able to see that as part of the enterprise fund's revenue sources. It should be reported as an other source of revenue, which would have gone into your overall financial statements on your enterprise fund, but we did not see that. We saw at least one grant that we were trying to trace through with the Auditor General that happened in about 2012, 2013 for $2.7 million. We can't determine whether or not it was for Industrial Road. We can't determine whether or not that went into the Flat River Road Special Revenue Fund, which then was closed out over a number of years and transferred into the Enterprise Fund in 2017, which the general fund funded approximately $464,000 in an interfund transfer to subsidize the Enterprise Fund in 2017 for that particular project. We're trying to track that down to see if anybody can give us a definitive answer on that $2.7 million that was part of the grant money. So the other thing that we have is we don't have an allocation. When we're looking at the user fees compared to the user expenses on the assessment, not on the assessment side, but on the actual sewer side, we don't have an allocation of any other costs that were incurred for the enterprise fund. So typically you're going to have time that's going to be on the treasurer collector side. You're going to have additional costs, administrative costs, benefit costs, things like that, that typically get allocated into the enterprise fund so that the enterprise can be a self-sustaining fund, or the anticipation is that they're going to set user rates that are going to cover all of their costs. So that's one item that we noted, that you're not doing an allocation of other indirect costs into the enterprise fund itself. We had a discrepancy between the assessments issued by year to the overall assessment revenue. Again, we're not sure if that really relates to the grant funding, so we're trying to tie that out, but we ended up going with what the information was on the audited financial statements, because it might just be a timing difference or something in your internal systems that wasn't tying back to those audited financial statements. So whenever we were in doubt, we used the audited financial statements that were done by the third-party auditor. What has been happening is you've been using journal entries to book your revenues out of the general fund to the enterprise fund, all at the end of the year. So in that case, you're doing all of your assessment collections are going into one fund, which is going into the general fund. And at the end of the year, there's just a journal entry to move some of those assessment revenues over to the enterprise fund. There easily could be something where things might not be captured completely. Most of the time you see it going into a separate fund as a revenue source so that everything can be tracked. That's not what you have going on here. It could lead to an internal control weakness if there is revenue that's coming in or an abatement that's made. Maybe it's not hitting the right fund. We had prior period adjustments to the fund statements 5 different times, from 2003 to 2004 up to 2017. We had a 2012 adjustment on a prior period adjustment for an abatement on user fees for approximately $800,000. We believe that to be the AmGen adjustment that was done on the user fees. I could be wrong on the timing on that, but we're trying to get some of the information on that. That was an adjustment to your prior period really net assets. So that would be something, if you were looking at the overall picture of what your user fees were going to be for the entire program, this is something that would have been factored in to any rate studies that were done, and we noted a number of different rate studies that were done, that the $800,000 wasn't considered as part of the revenue that you would never have. In 2013, one of the things that we noted was that there was a prior period adjustment for some improperly expensed costs of approximately $150,000. Those costs, again, if they weren't captured as a capital item originally during any sort of an assessment process, that would have been something that would have fallen to the bottom line that you weren't aware of. So other issues and items of note, it appears as though there's incomplete information to make a proper sewer rate determination for the user fees and the cost recovery. And that's really just due to the fact that we're trying to really nail down exactly what you have going into the overall assessments by year, because there's a lot of moving parts that are happening with abatements and things like that. So that's a suggestion that we have, and there's ways that you can really kind of get down to exactly what those revenues happen to be coming in. And prior to contract number 8, the assessment methodology really didn't match up, per se, the total construction costs to the assessments. And then even with contract number 8, you are giving a pump credit, so the total costs overall are not being recovered through assessments as well. The history of the assessment started out somewhere around $1,750 to $3,200 to $4,400 to $6,600 to $12,900 up to approximately $21,000. So over that span of time, even though costs did rise as well, we couldn't really see much evidence, and there might be somewhere that there was that analysis that was done to determine that the costs that were being charged on the assessments were enough to cover all the actual construction costs. And again, just due to the accounting methods that we're seeing within the books and records, it's a little bit difficult to ascertain the total assessment to the total construction costs due to the fact that you have different funds that are being accounted for as special revenue funds, and they're not all accounted for in the enterprise fund. So that there's a lot of information that could be grant money and other things that could be accounted for in other funds. So in looking at the construction costs to the assessments, we looked at the overall project assessments versus the construction costs from, again, the inception of the enterprise fund in 2004 to this is actually through 2016, because we didn't have the audited statements available at the time that we had put this together. And so the total construction costs from the audited financial statements are $32,100,000. This does not include anything related to the West Warwick treatment plant at all. This is actually what you have paid from the town for the total construction costs from 2004 to present. The total assessments that have been issued that we're aware of, it's $22,200,000. And of those assessments, we have abatements of approximately $2 million. Leaving a net of $20 million in the total assessments that were issued. We have grant and other funding, the major grant being the Amgen grant that came in at the beginning of the program for $6 million. On top of that, we have that $2.7 million grant that we're still trying to figure out if that really related to if Industrial Drive and Flat River Road and that fund happen to be the same. If that's not included in there, if the 2.7 is not part of that grant money that really was put in to offset those costs, because that construction cost is not part of the $32 million, then we have a shortfall of approximately $5 million as opposed to $2.3 million. So with regard to the project funding, the total debt that was taken out on the project, which included the tax anticipation note at the beginning for $6 million, is $25.3 million. The repayments on the debt so far have been $5.8 million, and your remaining debt on the books is $19.5 million. The total assessments on the project, again, $20,200,000 net of abatements, and what we have for the remaining assessment receivables sitting on your balance sheet on the enterprise fund is $9.1 million, which leaves a shortfall on your total debt on the principal amount of $19.5 million to your total assessment receivables of $9.1 million, a shortfall of $10,400,000. And the total remaining debt on the books does not include the interest component. This is as if you close the enterprise fund tomorrow. This would be your shortfall. So some of the concerns that we had with the evaluation based upon the general accounting was really tracking the funds movement through the general fund. A lot of the journal entries that are made at the end of the year are made typically by your outside auditor, and there's movement between the funds. We had a difficult time trying to trace some of those journal entries moving between the funds. The booking of the total assessment receivables, typically with this type of financing, that the assessment receivables would be booked at the time that the assessments were actually issued. You have some assessments that are kind of in limbo right now because you're not able to assess them right now. But there's also costs that we didn't consider in our presentation because those are costs that were incurred. Some in 2016 as construction in progress, but mainly in 2017. Any interfund transfers. So anytime that a fund is in a somewhat of a deficit position or needs some cash flow, which is what we were able to see and ascertain on the 2017 financial statements, that the interfund balance between the general fund and the sewer fund currently, as of June 30th, 2017, stands at $2,286,086. So that is the amount that has been advanced from the general fund to the enterprise fund on your audited financial statements. That's the amount that we can see. Again, there could be other things based upon the fact of how you've been doing your accounting, but that's the balance that's sitting right now. So the other item too is we kind of talked about the Amgen and the other grant funding. I'm not sure if it is going into the enterprise fund. We couldn't really see it in there as part of the revenue. So that could be another piece that was really a shortfall overall. And then again, we didn't get a chance to go through and verify the total construction costs. We've just been looking at what actually has been capitalized into the enterprise fund, which is the $32 million. So just some other accounting considerations to note. You have a debt obligation really to West Warwick through the IMA, and the total of that debt obligation as of your June 30th, 2017 financial statements is $7.3 million. Again, that is the amount that's being passed on to your existing users through a West Warwick debt fee that's being tacked on to the charges that they're paying right now. So that's an additional debt obligation that exists, which is not on your books. One of the items we noted was that based upon the terms of the IMA and your practices, that you actually keep all of the credit risk for the user fees and the payments to West Warwick. And what I mean by that is that you are obligated to pay West Warwick in advance of you receiving the funds. So there's a timing difference between the time that you are getting charged essentially from West Warwick as a user, and you need to pay those fees prior to you actually collecting it from your users. So in the event that there happens to be a default or a judgment or an abatement, anything like that, the town is actually absorbing that cost as well. You also have as an asset really on the books, which is from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. It's debt in the amount of $2.4 million that you are actually paying back, but it's undrawn and it's available. That is something that happens to exist there. I know that was another consideration of whether or not that might be something that could be returned so that you don't have to pay the debt on it, as opposed to having it sit there as a receivable that's really not available for you for general fund or general operations of the fund. Talking about the user fee considerations, based upon the expected cash flows coming in from the user fees, the fees are not adequate to cover the costs of the system themselves. There, again, has been no allocation of the indirect costs that's been made. The number of users on the system, approximately somewhere between 600 and I think a little bit more information today, probably around 700, 750 due to one user that actually comprises a number of different smaller users included within them, which is a small base of which to really absorb all of the operating expenses of that fund. The abatements, those are some user fee considerations. Within the Amgen settlement, there was a settlement agreement that Amgen would not be paying the same user fee as any of the other residents that exists on there as well. And then also to the abatements related to the restatement of the previous year's financials. So any decisions that may have been made based upon past financials for the rates going forward were actually kind of offset by the fact that you had all of these abatements and other things going on. You've had rate studies that have been conducted by Woodcock and Associates, and you had rate studies done in, I believe it was 2003, 2007, 2011, and maybe 2014. And I don't know if I was sure if there's another one going on right now. I know I saw some dates that were January of 2018, but I don't know if that was so there's not another one going on right now. But within those rate studies, a lot of the projections that they were using were based upon having additional users on the system. Clearly, when that doesn't manifest itself, then you run into an issue like this where you don't have enough users on the system to really absorb the operating costs and as well as the assessment costs. And the other item too is the participation in the regional treatment plant budget. We've seen some correspondence back and forth that you do have a seat at the table in theory to vote at the regional plant budget. There was an amendment proposed on the IMA in 2010 that would really have a little bit more clarity on getting some information on that budget prior to it being approved. That's something to consider kind of moving forward as to what your role is on the regional plant budget as well. So other considerations and next steps. So we have another potential issue with Commerce Park where there's some central billing going on. It's a possibility that there could be $800,000 that might not be collectible. That the money has already been sent, again, because you absorb the credit risk. It's already been sent to West Warwick, so that's an issue that you have there. You have some concessions related to economic development with the Center of New England. So that deal that was entered into back in, I believe, in 1997, that was a 20-year tax incremental financing agreement. It was a TIF where you were giving them considerations and concessions related to economic development. That economic development really didn't manifest itself into what you thought it was going to. That resulted in fewer users on your system with regard to your sewer system, and that agreement was extended another 20 years in 2015. So that agreement has been extended again. So that impacts your property revenues and your inventory revenues, not necessarily your sewer revenues, but it's something just because it's kind of all tied together back to maybe the initial purpose for the sewer fund. We have concerns about the sustainability of the program based upon the information that we've presented. Again, we could verify additional financial records just to make sure that some of those numbers are really being tied together, but we are deriving the information from your audited financial statements audited by your third-party auditor. The sewer rate analysis, I think that was the question of, did we have one that was started in 2018? So we see some correspondence, but it must be that you haven't actually engaged Woodcock again in 2018 for a sewer rate analysis. We also have the Cedar Ridge, the West Greenwich line, that it appears as though West Greenwich happens to be using the line that really belongs to Coventry, and what is Coventry doing with regard to West Greenwich, and are you going to get into the habit of trying to receive money back from that use of the line? So some West Warwick considerations. The provisions of the IMA, I have some additional notes on the IMA provisions. So the provisions of the IMA really mandate that you're going to be paying a certain percentage of capital costs based upon what is your reserve capacity. Your reserve capacity is at 2.25 million gallons per day, and I believe that you're using approximately 10% of the capacity at that plant itself. So your debt that you're paying on the West Warwick plant itself is actually based upon your reserve capacity, not on your actual capacity. Your assessment fees coming from that regional treatment plant based upon the operating budget are supposed to be based upon what you're using, not what you're actually being reserved for. I don't know that that's happening. You have the right to audit the West Warwick treatment plant. There have been requests that we've seen to request additional information from them with regard to their budget and what information went into their budget. I don't know if there has been any correspondence on that or what any back and forth has been done with regard to that. Let's see. So initially in, I believe it was 2005, prior to 2005, West Warwick was actually billing your customers, and they had an issue with regard to not being able to lien on the property if there was an event where a Coventry resident wasn't paying. So there was a turnover of the billing function to the town of Coventry for those users. And upon taking over the West Warwick billing, Coventry had to pay West Warwick for any charges that previous ratepayers did not pay to West Warwick. So trying to trace that in is approximately $250,000 from the inception. So that put you a little bit in the hole from the beginning there too. And in addition to that, because you, again, bear all the credit risk in accordance with the IMA, that any bills on abandoned property that you will have to pay West Warwick, if you have no way to actually recover those costs, then that's another cost that the town is bearing.
Nice.
So with regard to some of the next steps, we've gone through a number of the minutes. There could be additional minutes, but I think that sometimes it's better to just have a conversation on what anybody knows, because we've lost some of the legacy history, I think, here between all the changeover in some of the, the town manager and the finance director as well. So we could really probably have a few conversations on any other elements that we may be missing in our analysis, in our report. And it's really looking at what are the options related to the IMA provisions and the assessment and use charge considerations. You do have the ability to lease, sell, or otherwise grant up to 10% of the capacity that you have at that plant to somebody else during any given year. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't profess to be one, but that's something that you have a conversation, with your town solicitor on, because there could be, I don't know if there's a cap, it's cumulative, whatever the 10% might end up looking like, but that could be an option for you to be able to recover possibly some of those costs through a lease arrangement. We'll continue to work with the Auditor General, and we're cooperating clearly with the Auditor General and sharing information just to try to make sure that we can bring all the information to you. The verification of financial information, if there is something that you feel that you want to dig into a little bit on the construction costs or something related to the assessments a little bit more than what we've done derived from the audited statements, that's something that we can propose as well as the delivery of the report. We just want to make sure that we have a couple conversations with what you're really looking for at this point, and if anything from our presentation really causes you to want to move in a slightly different direction. With that, I will ask you for whatever questions you have of me that I can try to hopefully answer.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, and appreciate all the information you've given us today. I know there's going to have to be a step in the future process to meeting again with the parties. We get a full-time finance director hired shortly, hopefully. Our interim town manager, our sewer subcommittee, et cetera, and go from there as to what would be the next steps. We know this is a presentation tonight to the council. That's what this is, and that's why we've scheduled it, presentation to the council. All right, and obviously public is welcome to listen. It's up to the council and our town government and our town manager and our town solicitor to dive into what's next. Working with, of course, you folks if the council so chooses. And I don't know, Mr. Gorham, is there anything you'd want to bring up before we ask if the council has any questions of Mitzi on this presentation?
Go ahead. Let the council just go ahead.
Okay. Then at this time, after hearing the presentation, I'd welcome any questions or comments from the council to our individual here presenting the Mitzi.
Comment to me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not an accountant, but there's a lot of shortcomings in here and a lot of issues that need to be addressed.
Is your mic on? Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, can you hear me? Obviously, there's a lot of shortcomings, a lot of issues we have to deal with. Now, is this going to be an ongoing, you're still continuing to work, and you're not completed the project, are you, or are you not?
Really, the last piece of it is related to any sort of suggestions or where you want us to take this from here, because I think there's certainly a large hole to fill, and if there is something that you want us to look at specifically related to that, or how maybe it came to be, or any options from a financial perspective, yeah. So this is kind of the interim meeting to determine what you want to do from this point before we create the report and issue the recommendations.
I mean, I guess we need time to really absorb all this. I mean, it's quite a bit, but it's amazing how the West Warwick...
All right, the councilman speaking. Audience is welcome to listen, and if not, we'll welcome you to leave.
It's amazing how, especially what gets me is the West Warwick obligation and how we were responsible. A lot of this stuff we're unaware of, you know, that we had to pay prior to if anybody else missed their payments. I mean, there's a lot to absorb, and I was surprised at a lot of these things, but we need to sit down and really discuss it, find out, what the, like I said, I'm not an accountant, I don't claim to be, just as you're not a lawyer, but certainly, we make our decisions based on information we get, and, if we don't have the right information, then it's tough to make decisions, but we're certainly going to look into this and move forward with it. Thank you.
Mrs. Bacon?
I know in here you have under timeline and status, you're still waiting for document. What documents are you still waiting for?
So it's more any documents from here, and again, if you want us to dig further into it, construction documents, invoices, things like that related to verification of the costs. There's also some minutes that we weren't able to pull from the website. I think we've been redirected to where they might be on the website, so we're trying to pull that information as well. Nothing significant, I would say, unless there's things that we don't know of that exist that could be out there that we may, find called to our attention.
Okay, and you said you did get a copy of the audit, correct?
We did, from the Auditor General, yes.
Okay, thank you. And under Auditor General meeting, you have transfer of West Warwick debt to general fund. So that was transferred on April 19th?
No, sorry. That was the conversation that was had of ways that you had been talking about or discussing of things that could be done from a short-term perspective as to how to alleviate some of the issues with regard to the ability for the enterprise fund to sustain itself. So that was a consideration that I believe that someone had had that conversation, at least with the Auditor General.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just looking through my notes. So the grant funding, so you don't have all of those receipts for the grant funding, or?
We only have one grant letter that has been presented to us for $2.7 million. And again, we're trying to figure out whether or not that is the exact grant amount that then really was done through a special revenue fund instead, because the amount that was spent was greater than the $2.7 million, but not by the amount of the shortfall as well, so it was even more expenditures. There could be another grant that we're not aware of.
Okay, and records destroyed and sewer backup? What kind of records are we, what are you looking, what kind of records?
Really any paper records. I think it became somewhat evident to us that it honestly, whatever the problem was, would have already have been solved or resolved through the general fund back in the day at the inception of the program. So those records really would have just shown what the sewer assessments were, what the sewer revenues happen to be, the user fees, things like that, because everything prior to the new accounting standard that was really put together really kind of put everything together. So it's almost like you could have kind of put it all in one big pot and stirred it up, and you wouldn't know exactly what was what coming in. And so we just weren't able to go back and ascertain the specifics because the records weren't available.
Okay. And under project funding, shortfall, 10 million. Any suggestions on what we do with 10 million on that shortfall? How did that happen?
Yeah, so the way that happened really is through a series of chronic underassessments, for the most part, of the construction costs themselves. And that really started at the beginning and compounded over time as you, and also the timing of the payment of the assessments when you're charging, as you're charging currently 6% on the assessments, if someone can go and get a home equity loan for 2%, 3%, 4%, it's more likely that they may go and obtain a home equity loan and pay it off sooner rather than later. So any potential revenue, and again, I don't know how some of the rates were set. The minutes were very sparse with regard to that as well. But if there was ever an assessment that was done based upon utilizing a component of the interest income to pay off some of the shortfall on the assessments, that would fail by virtue of individuals paying off assessments prior to the 20-year period. Again, difficult to ascertain as to if that was going into the decision-making process with regard to the rates or not, but that's a component there.
Okay, and under total debt taken out on the project, the 25 million, and And it included TAN, so is that based on the real estate taxes, or is it based on future assessments?
So when you have a special revenue fund, or a special, not a special revenue fund, the bonds themselves coming out are actually secured by the user fees and the assessments. So with the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, you have a compliance certificate that you're required to do every year, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that your revenues coming in are going to be more than 1.25% your debt service fees, so that you can actually pay back that debt. So during any time that you're utilizing these special assessments going through the enterprise fund, they're really secured by the revenue stream that's coming in the future. And so if you don't have that revenue stream, that's when you run into issues with compliance, which is what we're starting to see as well.
Okay, so I guess that'll bring me into, so the fiscal sustainability plan, have you been able to review that?
Is that the Weston Sampson one?
Yes.
Yeah, I have not seen that. I think you just showed it to me earlier.
Yeah, so you have not?
No, we haven't received that at all.
Okay, and that's required through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank that we have this?
No, well, it could have been as a component of the compliance certificate that's required. So maybe you engage Weston and Sampson to perform that sustainability requirement, but it's probably all part of the same thing, which is really making sure that you have enough revenue coming in, either through assessment revenue that's been deferred over the 20-year period, and the user fees to cover your debt service costs. So it's probably a component of that. I have the compliance certificate, but I just don't have that piece of it.
Okay. All right, I'll let others.
Okay, Mrs. Carlson.
Hi, thank you for the information. It's, we've been anxiously awaiting it. Again, this was kind of fast, and I noticed that there was a difference between what we received on Friday and the numbers that are in here. So can you tell me what that's about?
Yeah, so today we had a lengthy conversation with the Auditor General after the Auditor General came and visited here at Coventry. So based upon that conversation, I did change up the presentation actually today, and I felt bad for Ed. I sent him the final presentation very late in the game, so he said he had already printed my old one, which came on Friday, I believe, or actually prior to that, maybe Thursday. So we had some last minute changes. There really aren't too many changes. Some of the references really just to the Auditor General to make sure, and I'll put the disclaimer out there that these are not suggestions from the Auditor General in any way, shape, or form. We're working directly with the Auditor General, so that was really to clarify that. But then also with some of the numbers, just to some of them just were rounded. We have the numbers, again, derived from the audited financial statements. We made projections based upon where we were going, but most of those numbers are just rounded. So if you look at them, and there was actually one component, too, that did need to change, which is in the total debt service amount. You'll see that the debt service requirement was listed at about $2.3 million. Between talking with the Auditor General, we had a discrepancy of about $300,000 on that, and that really was related to the fact that we had already put into our schedule originally that the refinance with the conduit debt, not knowing that that actually was to refinance the $8.2 million debt, not a new issuance, because we were issued the amortization table, but we weren't really given the explanation for it. So the Auditor General was able to, ascertain that and get back to us, because once we had the audited financial statements, that's when we could tie it back to that number specifically and see that it wasn't a new issuance.
But these are still projected numbers.
Everything's a projection. The debt service we have the debt service schedule. That's not a projection. Your debt service over the next couple years is debt service, which is approximately $2 million.
Okay, and then also, when this is done, will we get a written narrative summary of everything? Because
yes,
I appreciate the PowerPoint, but it's like,
exactly. It's more so to have the conversation to see, what it is, and we'll summarize the entirety and give the overview as to exactly, what we believe had happened through the history of the Enterprise Fund.
And then also, now, all of this information and all of the numbers, gotten a couple different comments from different people that we do need to address this in our next fiscal budget, or we don't need, and we're going to kick the can down the road, which I think is a real bad idea, because we know how well that worked with the pensions, so let's not make this any worse. Are you waiting for the Auditor General to make a recommendation, and how much would we need to now add into the budget we've already voted on to take to the financial town meeting? Are we going to have to change that drastically? Because we don't have any time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concern is that what it is that you actually have the ability to do right now
Exactly.
is limited.
Yes.
So the issue being that the general fund has been funding any shortfall in the enterprise fund, and that is almost where you're left with at this moment. As it's structured right now, it's an interfund transfer, so it's sitting there as a receivable. It wasn't an intergovernmental revenue. It wasn't as if it has gone to this enterprise fund as a component of revenue. So it is just accumulating there. I think at this point, due to the impending shortfall in your assessments, unless you were to go through and change your rates currently, I don't see any way that you would be able to really do anything of substance to really kick this down the can, or kick the can down the road, other than potentially doing the refinance of that debt through the conduit loan for $6.5 million, because that does reduce your debt service payment. Again, it's not doing anything for your future, but it's certainly helping you in the short term. And that loan, from what we understand from your finance company, is still available. There was some consideration once they realized the financial situation that was going on here, but I believe, from what they were saying today, that it's still an option out there.
But we're already paying on that, and we haven't used that 2.
That's a different one. Yeah, so this is a different one. So you've got two components there. So you've got some money from the clean water financing.
Before it was Ribby.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got some of that's unused, and it's available. So that
and we're paying on that.
You are paying on that piece,
So
correct.
it's as if we've already taken that money out. It just happens to be sitting there and we haven't used
Correct. So that is an element that I would say that, if there is something legally that you can do on it, that would be, I know there's conversation about seeing if you could return it. Typically, it's not necessarily the case, but you may be able to get into
to pay off towards
to
the
pay
debt.
off some of the debt. You may be able to get into some sort of, you can't use it to pay the debt, so you can't borrow from it just to pay the debt. It has to
No,
be
but you
financed,
can
but
just
try to
reduce
make
the
it
debt.
go away. Right. So I think that's a conversation, certainly, because you have that asset on the books where it's there unused, but you are paying that and it's in your debt component. It's difficult to ascertain exactly how much of that is what you're paying on debt service right now, because it's a component of a larger bond offering that you're paying on the entire thing. I'm not sure which one it is, but we could probably trace back into that, and maybe that's something that we'd want to do. But so that's one option, and then the second option being if you did want to refinance into the conduit debt, then, and that might be an element or a way to try to return the unused funds, really looking at it in its entirety of all of the financing that you have. But refinancing to that $6.5 million conduit debt will, in the short term, save you approximately $460,000 in debt service per year. Again, once you hit year 3, that's when all of a sudden you feel the other side of it kicking in with another $680,000 more than what you were paying all along. So it's some short-term options, certainly, to look at that $2 million of unused, see if you can get that back, as well as the, maybe refinancing for the conduit debt if that's what you choose to do.
Now, all of the conduit debt and everything else, I mean, we know that when you take out a bond, the voters vote, we have a bond, say for $12 million, and by the time it's paid off in 20 years, it's actually $16 million, because we have a huge amount of interest and penalty, fees and all that stuff. The numbers that you're talking about in here, is that inclusive of everything? This is a bottom line number, so at this point, that's the actual amount, or projected amount.
So the total debt service, when I say 19.4 million, is that what you're saying? Is
Yes.
that the total amount of cash to be
Inclusive of
repaid?
interest and
No.
fees?
No, so it's not inclusive of interest. It's actually what's on your balance sheet right now, which is if you were to pay that back, if the fund was to close tomorrow,
Okay.
then the net shortfall between the assessment receivables you have, if you were able to collect them all at 9.1 million, to your debt service that you owe currently at 19.4, that's the shortfall of $10 million. Add in the interest, and you're looking at approximately $7 million, $8 million more.
Well, that's...
You're fired!
Okay, so, Weston and Sampson, we've used them forever, apparently. Are their costs in here?
So in the operating expenses of the enterprise fund, there is a contract that you have with them that's approximately $140,000 right now for monitoring and testing all of your equipment and the underlying, just doing all the testing, the maintenance. So that is an ongoing contract that you have with them. That's included in those assessment fees as well. For any design fees, things like that, those typically should have been capitalized as part of the construction costs along the way with any of those projects. Again, we didn't verify that those were included as part of your construction costs. They could have been expensed. It's not, but under accounting standards, they should have been capitalized as well. But your ongoing fees that you're paying to them are going through your operating expenses.
Okay, so can you verify those expenses? You know, you mentioned a few minutes ago about the construction costs, and I would like to see every penny accounted for. I want to see invoices and where the money's gone, what's still outstanding. I mean, we are in a financial crisis, and we are in a big crunch time here. We've got a budget in a couple weeks that we are taking to the taxpayers.
So I think, just to answer the question on, a timeline on verifying construction costs, we have no ability to get that information, I would say right now. But I'm also trying to ascertain what that would do for you from a financial perspective, just so that
if those numbers are in here
of
what we still owe. Right?
For what you would owe to Weston and Sampson now.
Do we still owe money to Rockio? Do we still owe money to D'Ambra? Do we have,
for the construction costs that you have currently on the, okay. Yeah, so there's a couple pieces that are captured in construction in progress, and I actually did exchange emails with your Director of Public Works today on what some of those outstanding costs still were, and he did mention that there were some costs that haven't been paid, and I believe it might have been about $150,000 or so.
You need that.
I have it. I just can't open up my email right now because I'm not on a network.
But I mean, we need it in here because, and you also had 3 scenarios, and now we only have 2 in the new.
Yeah. So the third scenario, after talking with the Auditor General, because we were under the impression that you already were moving forward with some of these suggestions to move those debt payments or that it was a potential that you're going to move those debt payments over to the general fund. So that was the scenario that we put together. And at that point, we changed that to just saying these are some of the options that exist. So that's why that changed. So it wasn't a third scenario that really was.
Well, as far as I know, I mean, I haven't been in any discussions as to how we're moving things around. So I don't know where that's going. But I just want to make sure that we have every single number that we know we can get. And I think you've done, and I understand that you got delayed through no fault of your own.
Right, and I think the other thing to note too is that we just received the audited statements for 17 today. So those costs and the analysis is really done through 16, but in looking at what happened in 17, just to kind of bridge the gap, so I went through that information as well this morning. And so what we saw was a $1.2 million transfer from the general fund to fund the enterprise fund activities during fiscal year 17. So the year that just ended, June 30th, 17, that was where you were sitting between the general fund and the enterprise fund.
And we're also coming up on the end of the moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know what to do. Not that you can, I mean, just that we have to see
I mean, I'm really here to just give you the financial information and the picture and where you are right now.
Right.
So I think that that's really a decision that, when you're facing a fairly large shortfall, it's something that it certainly needs to be considered.
Yeah, well,
okay.
So what are you thinking will be the final report timeline? I'm sorry, I know you said that. Didn't you say that?
I mean, it's really depending upon what you want to do and where you want to take it from here and what you want us to do. I think having that conversation is imperative because the report itself is pretty much exactly the information that we presented today as to how you got to where you are right now and where we are. And then the real question is, what do you want to do? So that's kind of the missing piece right now.
All right, we have a couple more questions. All right, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, Councilman LaBossiniere and then our town solicitor would like to ask some questions. We're not going to solve it tonight, we know that.
So part of what you're asking us to do, you know, as finding how we're going to move forward with your company, what I'm interested in is how we're going to come up with a, you know, with a strategy and a priority list as to how those strategies are going to work to move this back in. Is that part of the scope that you're talking about?
I mean, we can propose options. Again, we're not going to propose a solution, but we'll give you information so you can make a decision yourselves. Because, you know, one of the options, which, you know, is generally non-palatable, is increasing assessments and increasing user rates. So that's an option. So it's something that you have to consider, you know, along with, you know, trying to see if you do want to refinance some of the debt, which again is kicking the problem down the road, but it is an option. So we're going to present you with a number of different things you can do, you know, or continue to fund it through the general fund. I mean, that's an option. It's something that you have the ability to continue to do, but you're going to have to weigh that.
In your discussions with the Auditor General, would they have you know, some of their option, you know, any options presented with you, or no? We're just it's all.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Auditor General wants to get involved to make a suggestion as to exactly what you want to do. So it's going to have to be a discussion.
But the suggestion that you talked about moving the bond and the payment over to the general fund. That's why, you know,
yeah, I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but it didn't come from the Auditor General. It was information that they had received that they were relaying to us that came from
okay.
here.
It may have been our finance director which spoke with them about it and maybe posed that as an option that we could do. Okay, all right, good. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gorham.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. It's very eye-opening, for sure. The question I have is that it seems like there are really two options. The town has to consider raising user fees and assessments from its historical perspective. In other words, that was done on a project recently. It met with a lot of opposition, to say the least. And I think the council recognized that when they imposed the temporary moratorium on that project. They essentially ended the project at 50% completion. So I think it's been demonstrated to the council that raising user fees above a certain point is going to bring a certain amount of blowback. That was the first time, contract number 8, that the fees were ever reflective of construction costs. I think you said that in your report, didn't
Correct.
you?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But that's the reckoning that would have to take place, isn't it?
Exactly, and that was what was listed too in some of the rate studies, looking at phasing in the assessments. The earliest assessments on the system were essentially woefully inadequate to cover the costs, and so that just compounds over and over again, resulting in the negative number that you're seeing between your receivables and your debt costs.
So the other alternative that I think you've kind of alluded to, it's always been kind of the third rail of Coventry politics, but I think we have to start a discussion about it, would it be fair to say that given the situation, the only way to possibly make user fees more acceptable, lower, for people who want to have sewers, is to consider some form of subsidy by the town council, by the town, in the cost of the sewer system?
I mean, that's an option that you can consider as well. But I think that the issue is always looking at, you know, does the town want to be in the business, in the sewer business? And is it something that the rest of the ratepayers in the town want to subsidize? And is it something that is being done for the benefit of economic development, which is then considered to be what is benefiting the town on the other side from the revenue perspective? And I think that, you know, overall, when you look at what was done really with the Center of New England, is likely what the impetus was behind that particular project, was looking at it and saying, well, if we offer incentives on the property tax side and the inventory tax side to come in, we're going to have them as, we're only able to attract them because we have sewer infrastructure. Without the sewer infrastructure, you're not going to be able to attract the same type of economic development. So you know, one hand to the other between, is it a property tax reduction that you're issuing in order to get additional users onto the sewer system, but do you need the sewer system in order to get more property tax revenue? And it's the age-old question, and most cities and towns, are facing the same situation. So, you know, it's a difficult situation. You're not alone in having a financial crisis. You know, certainly, but this is, you know, an issue that you've got to figure out what you want to do with it.
It's interesting you mentioned Center of New England and the component of using the property tax inducements as a way to build the sewer system through economic development. The trouble with that was that it was never clarified who was going to pay for the sewer system at Center New England, and that's how the mall and the town became mired in years of litigation. And I'm not exaggerating when I say almost 10 years of litigation and disagreement about who was going to pay for the sewer system. So that just brings up my last question. If the town council is going to focus on projects, I guess it's kind of a rhetorical question, I'll confess to that, but don't you think it makes sense that the town council would focus on where the sewer infrastructure is already in place? For example, Center of New England, or some of the other developments that have been proposed over the years adjacent to existing sewer lines.
Well, I think that the cost of sewer construction for new construction compared to the number of users, or there should be an analysis done of the potential costs versus what the revenues would be. Again, with some projections, if you're looking at Center of New England, I'm sure, you know, originally projections were a lot higher than what they ended up turning into. But if the infrastructure is already there, that does allow you to connect on more users. The more users you have on the system, certainly the more there are to burden the costs of the operating costs that are happening of the enterprise fund itself. So, yeah.
If we don't do anything, I mean, eventually, isn't it almost like it's an inevitability that the taxpayers of Coventry are going to end up subsidizing the sewer fund, because if their revenues keep shortfalling the way they have, there's no way out except for use of the general fund. I mean, it's almost automated, isn't it?
Unless there's a way that you can work the IMA with West Warwick with regard to the usage capacity, some way to sell that, lease it, you know, the rights to that to somebody else who might actually be using it. That's an option to try to dig yourself out of the hole a little bit.
West Warwick is in debt as well. So the more we ask to adjust West Warwick, the trouble is, it's I think the government of our state is reticent to start adjusting West Warwick just to help Coventry, because West Warwick isn't in very good shape either. That's the challenge with that. To the extent that we're helped by cutting off more revenue from West Warwick, how are we going to get help? How are we going to get help when it just finishes off West Warwick? That's the trouble.
Right. I think
it's all relative in this system.
Yeah, the impetus would be that the additional users on the West Warwick system would not be of any additional cost other than the cost by which they purchased your infrastructure for, in order to bring additional revenue onto their system. One of the other concerns that I have in looking at the enterprise fund as well is that you don't have a reserve for replacement and repairs at all included on there. Right. So if something should go wrong, you don't have any means by which to pay for it unless likely it comes from the general fund.
Well, thank you again.
Mr. Delaney, did you have some
just a couple of comments. One of the things that I can do for this group is I'll be meeting with the firm in the next few days, helping to really establish that roadmap for looking ahead. There's a lot of moving pieces here. There's trying to understand the broken part and preventing that from happening again. One of the things that really sticks in my mind is the potential for lack of internal controls or weakness. That tells me there needs to be a stronger partnership with the auditor, because something like that, in my view, should have popped up with an auditor. But looking ahead, in a partnership with the auditor, that's where you now specify as a council that you want the auditor to do additional testing. You want an additional narrative in a management letter. How are we doing on that aspect of it? That's just one example. There are other moving parts here in terms of the financial analysis piece to help with. And really kind of, if I were writing a consulting report on this, that you've got the set of findings and the recommendations on how to move ahead. And that's kind of what I'd be looking to develop and help put together with you. So you've got some options in front of you and trying to maintain some health. You've gotten what I would see as a very, very candid assessment of what we've got here. There's more to the story as you peel it back, but this is a tremendous start for us to help put this together for the plan for you folks. So that's what my next couple of weeks will be involved in with you.
Perfect.
Okay, then, yes, go ahead.
I'll be quick.
Right ahead.
Under the construction costs, I was just looking this over. It says 2004, and we went to 2016, and the total construction cost is $32 million. That's from 2004 to 16, but this.
Yeah, so it actually includes an adjustment in 2004 for $11.7 million for all the previously capitalized construction costs that were in some other fund as well. Okay. So that it really is capturing everything that wasn't somewhat lost along the way in the financial records.
Okay, and then the $19 million, the debt, does that also include the debt for West Warwick?
No, that's separate. So the debt for West Warwick, because it's not debt of Coventry, is actually only, and we could see it this year, it was actually reported on in your footnotes. It was something we were discussing with the Auditor General as well, that of the disclosure that was in there, is the $7.3 million. So again, that's debt that you are passing through to your users. So it's not really debt of Coventry, but you're obligated under the IMA to pay that debt.
Okay, and I guess a question for Mr. Delaney. Are we meeting with West Warwick to try and renegotiate the IMA?
I certainly think that would be an agenda item as we move forward. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
I know there had been efforts to have such a meeting. I know that it has not happened, but it certainly will be on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, thank you for coming out tonight, and obviously we have mucho work to do ahead of us and to try to dig out of this. Appreciate the information, and I know that Mr. Delaney will be staying in touch with you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next then, to move along, B, number one, Mr. Delaney, I guess I'll turn this over to you.
Actually, this was a placeholder, if you will. We are in the process of recruiting for finance director. In the event we needed authorization to consider a search firm, if you will. There might have been a fee involved. We're hoping to be able to fill the position without a search firm, so I would ask you that to take no action on this or table it, whatever would be preferable.
Okay, that's actually good news.
Yes, it is.
And Mr. Solicitor, shall we just take no action on it or to table it?
That would be a perfect solution, to take no action.
Take no action, okay. Very good. So we'll head down to C now. C1. Mrs. Lavoie or Mrs. Ematrano, who wants to cover one by one, I guess, these? All right, you do it the two together on the salvages? Okay. That'd be number one and number two.
Number one is the application for renewal of the auto salvage license for Capozzi Auto Sales and Salvage. Number two is the application for renewal of the auto salvage license for RC Repair.
I thought that we used to have public hearings on the junkyards in the past.
We should
Even on renewals.
and just open it up. Open it up for public hearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. It's been recommended that regarding this matter here on the renewal, we'll open it up. Motion to go and open public hearing on these matters. Do I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so it's,
We did not advertise this, though, as a public hearing. Nick?
Right, it wasn't advertised, I'm trying to look it up.
Right.
Can we just hold this item and I'll tell you if it is?
Sure. You want-
Necessary public hearing.
Last year it was a public.
I thought,
just get
they
to the
always, it's
bottom.
what I said, they always have been in the past.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, I'll be able to tell you definitively if we have it right or wrong. If it
Okay.
is wrong, we'll reschedule it.
All right. We're able to go to C3, though. This is one that is an application for 2 pool tables. We didn't have to advertise that, did we?
I don't think so. Not for a public hearing, no.
All right, so we have to, well, initially, we'll close the public hearing. A
Yes.
motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Public hearing is closed. We're going to hold those until we get an answer. Let's move to C3, which is an application by Fat Bellies for 2 pool table licenses. So noted, police have performed a records check with no issues. Zoning officer indicates no concerns with the issuance of a license, and according to the attached sheet, the fees have been paid, correct, Mrs. Lavoy, on these? Okay. All right, do I have a motion then to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that item, C3, has been approved. Okay. And we're just holding a second before we go to D.
Oh, why don't you?
We'll
You
continue.
want, just keep going?
Yeah, I would.
Continue.
Okay. Let's keep going then. All right, we're not holding a second now, we're going right to D. And the first matter, Mr. Solicitor, we have is the adopting the sewer budget, which we understand D1. I'll let you explain on this.
I think that there is no need to adopt a sewer budget tonight in light of the conversation that we've had with Citron Cooperman, and also in light of the fact that there is no appropriation in the budget that you approved last week that will go to the voters at the financial town meeting. There is no appropriation in that budget for the sewer fund. So this was largely put in place contingent on how our meeting went with the auditor and also with Citron Cooperman's report. I think it can be tabled indefinitely, but I think the words of Ms. Hollenbach from Citron Cooperman are prophetic. We will be visiting a sewer budget someday, no doubt about it, but not tonight.
But again, the meeting that you and our interim town manager had with the Auditor General, it was, I understood that it's not something that needs to be inputted into our budget that we're going to be considering June 12th.
No.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The Auditor General indicated you got to have the pieces together and properly together
Right.
before you get to this point.
Right.
It is a goal, hopefully in the near term,
Exactly.
to have a document of this nature available for public inspection. A lot of the same numbers that you saw tonight in the Citron report would be part of that budget. You really have it in the numbers that were presented tonight. There's more to it, and that we want to see to it.
Right.
And in the meeting today, they felt that it was premature at this point to try and bring that together in a
Okay.
way that wasn't as tight as it should be.
Okay, thank you. So basically, Mr. Solicitor, we're just taking no action on this versus voting to table it? Number one?
There's really no difference.
Okay, all right, so we'll take no action on number one. All right, number two, D2. We'll cover these one at a time. This is Matrano, or Mrs. Lavoy, either way. The first one is Human Services. Reread, we put them in. What's that? Yes. Each one individually, right?
Okay, so number 2 is we're appointing 2 members to the Friends of Human Services.
Okay,
Yeah, motion.
I have a motion?
Yeah, motion to appoint Gene Salemi.
No.
I'm sorry,
These
is
two.
it? All right.
Human Services.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong,
Human
I'm on
Services.
the wrong one.
Well,
then.
you-
All right.
but she's not-
We do it, so we can do one name at a time?
Yeah, but
Right, that's correct, right, okay. All right, motion to appoint Lois Tallman.
and
And are we doing both names together or just individually? Okay, one at a time. Yep.
okay, do I have you had a second on Lois Tolman? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay,
and a motion to appoint Marilyn Nagy.
Maggie.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so at this time, Lois Tolman and Marilyn Nagy, are you both present? Come on up if you are. If not, just stay right there, I'll be down here.
Oh, yeah, don't climb there. Yeah. Don't climb, just stay right there.
Glenn.
Okay. I thought you raised your hand back there. All right. No.
Doing good, take your time.
Take your time.
Doing good.
All right.
Best man that I saw.
Hi there, how are you? Okay. Standing okay? All right. All right, if you both can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the state, support the laws and constitution thereof, and that you will well and truly execute the duties and responsibilities as a member of the Friends of Human Services for the term for which you were appointed or until another be engaged in your place, so help you God? I do. Congratulations, and thank you for continuing being interested in helping out. I don't know if you have to. Okay. Next, we have D3. If we could take that one.
D3, appointing one member to Coventry Housing Authority.
Okay.
Motion to appoint Dave Jervis to the Housing Authority.
Okay. Mike, and...
Apologies. Motion to appoint Dave Jervis.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
To
Okay.
reappoint. Yeah.
As a reappoint. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Mr. Jervis, you're here, I believe. There we go. You raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the state, support the laws and constitution thereof, and that you will well and truly execute the duties and responsibilities as a member of the Coventry Housing Authority for the term for which you were appointed or until another be engaged in your place, so help you God? I do. Congratulations, sir. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to raise it up higher, according to Mr. Warsika. It's going to hit the sky. D4, please.
Appointing 2 members to the Library Board of Trustees.
Okay, motion to appoint Gloria Martins to the Library Board of Trustees.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the
And
next
a
one?
motion to appoint Colleen Duffy Golick,
Second.
or to reappoint.
Reappoint. All.
Yeah, both of them.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, is Ms. Martins and Ms. Duffy Golick here tonight? Are you here tonight? Sometimes they don't. All right,
Oh.
oh, okay. Coming in from the back area. I didn't know that. Good evening. Can you just raise your right hands, please? And do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the state, support the laws and constitution thereof, and that you will well and truly execute the duties and responsibilities as a member of the Library Board of Trustees for the term for which you were appointed, or until another be engaged in your place, so help you God? Congratulations. Thank you for your service. All right, next, D5.
Appointing 1 full member and 2 alternates to the Zoning Board of Review.
Okay, motion to reappoint Virginia Susi as the full member of the Zoning Board of Review.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
Okay. Is Mrs. Susi here? Or do
Yeah,
we?
well, we have 2 other.
Oh, all right. Why don't we wait and get the other 2?
Motion,
Motion, go ahead.
motion to appoint Irene Drew as the, as an alternate. To
Okay.
reappoint her as the alternate. They're all reappointments.
All right, a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the next one, sir.
And a motion to reappoint Jean Costello as the, as an alternate.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so if the 3 of you would be so kind to come up. Stay down low. I'll come down. Alrighty.
Okay.
If you just raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the state, support the laws and constitution thereof, and that you will well and truly execute the duties and responsibilities as a member of the Zoning Board of Review for the term for which you were appointed, or until another be engaged in your place, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations. 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 Okay, last, D6.
Appointing 3 member to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Motion to appoint Glenn Anderson, or reappoint Glenn Anderson to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, a motion to appoint James Kenny to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And a motion to appoint Sandy Lukowicz to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Second. Okay, motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Lukowicz, and Mr. Kenny, if you're all present.
Excuse me, Glenn, 1 second. Nick, I have a question with Sandy Lukowicz And Mr. Kenny, can they be sworn in tonight? Have they resigned from their other positions? Because with the other boards and commissions, when you're on planning, you can only be on one. I just want,
Can they consider the resignation or him to, whatever? Is they both intended on
what-
serving on one?
What is the,
Resign for historic district.
Yep.
Well,
okay.
and citizens advisory and the comp plan. We've got 3.
Wish I had,
It's a, do you have to or not?
I didn't know this question was gonna come up. but-
Section 13.12.
All right.
Yeah, they can't serve on
Oh,
two,
sorry.
but they-
Section 13.12 in the charter.
Okay, just give me one second to look at it.
I'm sorry for the whole. No, that's all right. I didn't know it was coming.
Zoning and planning are the 2 that you have, can only be on those 2. That's what we've always been doing.
Does it say that for zoning? I don't think it says that for zoning.
This is planning.
Yeah,
This is
planning.
planning. This is planning.
I thought you said planning and zoning.
No, this is planning.
Yeah, that is correct, that you can't hold any other posts, so if they tender their,
So they'll effectively be their resignation from the other boards.
yes.
All right, now if you can raise your right hand. Appreciate it.
Make sure I get sworn in.
All right. So,
Yeah.
They resign now.
I'm on page 3 now. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the state, support the laws and constitution thereof, and that you will well and truly execute the duties and responsibilities as a member of the planning commission for the term for which you were appointed or until another be engaged in your place, so help you God? Congratulations.
Good luck to you.
All right.
I have an answer on the
Oh, you want to go? We'll go back to that one. Yeah.
C1 and 2. I believe that a public hearing is required when the
Mike,
license.
you got your mic on?
It is on. I believe a license is required when the, a public hearing is required when the license is initially granted, but I don't think for every renewal that it's necessary. So, it's an old law, and that's only, the ordinance doesn't require it at all. But the way I read the law, which was last amended in 1965, and it originated before zoning, it requires all kinds of notice to people within 200 feet and so forth. The way I read that, I think it was intended that before a license is initially issued, not each year it's renewed. Okay, thank you. So in order to,
So it's
We,
over.
not public hearing, just,
Yeah.
okay. I do have a motion then to approve both C1 and C2. Renewal for auto salvage Kaposi's and renewal for auto salvage RC Repair Russell L. Chattel.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Approved. All right, now we're down to E. This is Amatrano. You wanted to, well, I guess we got to go, what, open meeting, open public
Well,
meeting
yeah,
first?
Have a read. She should read what it is first.
Read what it is first. Okay, if you could list them all, because we don't have that in our package. We have it in the agenda. this is number one, to start with. Secondhand license
E1.
renewals.
E1, secondhand license renewals. D's Walk-In Closet, 820 Tyoke Avenue. Little Pumpkins, 759 Tyoke Avenue. GameStop Incorporated, doing business as GameStop, number 3707, is 672 Center of New England Boulevard. Anthony Village Antiques, 658 Washington Street. Sophisticated, 303 South Main Street. Capwell Sports Center Incorporated, 35 Pilgrim Avenue. Homestead Interiors, 790 Washington Street.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to open public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public hearing on these different businesses that want a renewal on their licenses. And do we have any comments at all from the public regarding any of them during the public hearing regarding these?
Speak for, against?
For against. For against.
For,
Okay.
against. All right.
All right, motion, well, do I have a motion to close public
Motion to
hearing?
close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the licenses as presented.
Okay, motion made to approve the licenses as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, they all got approved. That's E1. And finally, we got E2. Motion, do we read it one at a time and then go for a public hearing, or a public hearing on all of them? I mean, each one, or total, or one at a time?
Well, this is a public hearing under the Zoning Enabling Act.
Right.
So for everybody's attention, these are the zoning amendments. I know a lot of people are here on that.
Right.
So,
All right.
I think, boy, there's a lot of reading to do. I don't think you have to read the whole paragraph, but I think you should read the first sentence of each of the bullets that are under section E2 of the agenda, just so people know what we're going to be talking about, if that's all right.
And then public hearing, we open it up? We
Yeah,
haven't done that
yeah,
yet.
right. I think the first thing we do is read them.
No, we close the other one.
No,
Yeah,
they close
yeah,
it.
we close the other public hearing.
It's better to do this separately anyway, so you didn't do anything wrong.
No, we,
I would just read the first sentence of each bullet.
Okay, now,
which-
all right, I've got, it looks like bullets 1 and 3 are the ones that I will need to remove myself from. So,
he's got to remove himself for
remove
1 and
myself.
3, I guess.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, 1
Well,
and 3, I thought they
What
were together.
what can be done is we can just vote on those separately. That's
Right.
typically how we do it.
You want to vote on those first, or you want to vote on, or we'll cover the other ones
Well,
first?
It's up to the council. The first thing we have to do is read these and then open the public hearing. And then I
Okay.
think we can deal with the voting a
Oh,
little bit after
okay,
that,
all right.
after the public
So are
hearing.
we going to read them all one at a time?
We're going to read the first sentence of all of them, and
Okay,
some of
that's
the
what I'm-
first sentences are longer than the other first sentences, but
All right,
that's the best I can do.
go right ahead, then start one at a time. First sentences.
Okay, the first one is Article 6, zoning district use and dimensional regulations, Table 6-1, G1, commercial outdoor recreation, line 4.
Okay, that's, all right, and the
Okay,
next one?
the second one is Article 6, zoning district use and dimensional regulations, Table 6-1, G1, commercial outdoor recreation, line 10. The next one,
New, okay.
Article 6, zoning district use and dimensional regulations, Table 6-1, G3, commercial indoor recreation, line 6.
Which is new in parentheses, important to note?
Yes.
And the last one was also new in
New in
parentheses.
parentheses.
Okay,
They've both been noted.
so noted. Okay, next one.
Article 4, Zoning Board of Review, Sections 423-424, Procedures of the Board, would expand the noticing area for abutters for zoning applications. The next one is Article 3, Administration and Enforcement, Section 3230, Filing Fees, Table 3-1, adding zoning certificate as F, with a fee of $25 for residential properties and $50 for commercial, industrial. Article 3, Administration and Enforcement, replacing the current Section 3131 with new text to authorize the and assessment of fees for reasonable costs and expenses associated with processing applications and moving current Table 3-1 into a new Section 3132.
That was one long sentence.
Yes, it was.
Next.
Article 3, Administration and Enforcement, adding a new Section 3133 to allow the zoning officer to recover additional costs and expenses due to the actions of an applicant, including but not limited to mailing, noticing, police or fire details, IT and computer networking, and securing and setting up for locations other than town hall council chambers. Okay, the next one is Article 4, Section 424, adding all costs for stenographic services shall be paid by applicant, and a corresponding amendment to Article 3, Administration and Enforcement, Section 3130, Filing Fees, Table 3-1, adding stenography cost shall be paid by applicant. The next one is Article 8, Non-Conforming Development, Section 861, Special Use Permits. The amendment would change the process for applications for special use permits in that permits for non-conforming lots would not require development plan review.
I think permits on that second line, that would have been the complete sentence, but you read it all anyhow, which is good.
Okay.
All right.
The next one, which is the last one, Article 9, Zoning Use Regulations, Section 920, General Development Regulations, to add Section 8927, Accessory Dwelling Structures, and 928, Accessory Family Dwelling Unit, in parentheses, AFDU, in-law apartment, and article and corresponding amendment to Article 2, Section 210, definitions.
Before public hearing? Okay. Okay, Ms. Wells, you're here, right? Hi. I'm kind of blocked behind the podium. If you could, as recommended, sort of like just give a little overview on each one of these, that would help before we open it up to public comment.
So on your agenda, under item number 2, the first 3 bullets are really one giant amendment. We split them up because they're actually separate actions. So this is about the gun range, and essentially the idea that was brought to us by Councilwoman Carlson to limit outdoor gun ranges. And so if you recall, staff took a stab at creating a proposed amendment, and we brought that to the Planning Commission for study. And they had several recommendations, which I believe are in front of you in a memo form. And just to summarize those quickly, in the current zoning ordinance, archery ranges and gun ranges are grouped together. So part of this is to pull them apart because they're actually quite different. And we are referring to bows, which what it says now is archery. On the Planning Commission's recommendation, they recommend that outdoor gun ranges be disallowed in all zoning districts. We would keep that in the zoning ordinance table, just putting ends all the way across. That makes it clear. This next recommendation would be that indoor commercial gun ranges would be allowed with a special use permit in the general business district Business Park District, and the industrial districts. Outdoor archery ranges, these are all commercial ranges, would be allowed with a special use permit in the rural residential districts 3 and 5, the general business district, the business park district, and the industrial districts. They do not recommend night use for any of the archery outdoor ranges. And for the indoor archery ranges, they would allow them in a special use permit in the general business district, business park district, and the industrial districts. So, hope that's clear.
Is that all the amendments?
No.
No, just the first one.
Those are the first three?
Those are the first
Well,
three
yes,
bullets.
the first 3 bullet points on the agenda.
Bullets. Are we gonna have an overview on all of them?
I think we should, yeah, I think it would be easier if we did the public hearing on all of them at once.
Right. So we're gonna have the overview on all of them first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
On all
Please
of the-
continue, yes.
Sure. So you want to go on to the noticing? You ready for that? Okay.
Right.
So that was the other recommendation from Councilwoman Carlson on expanding the abutters notices in the rural districts. Staff took a stab at that by looking at our subdivision regulations, which do have a wider noticing district for the rural residential areas. For applications that we've seen this year, like the gun range, and I think there was a dog kennel. We found that our noticing seemed insufficient given the potential impacts of those applications. But zoning enabling law only says that you would, by minimally notice within 200 feet of a parcel. We felt that was inadequate, as did the Planning Commission. So what we would like to do is expand the note. I don't know if you have it up on the screen. Expand the noticing so that the rural residential district 5 would be 2,000 feet notice. The rural residential 2 and 3 would be 1,000 foot notice. The village rural commercial and the village Main Street commercial, general business, business park, and industrial would be 500, and the R20 would be 200 feet for noticing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Everybody on board with that? We'll move on to the next bullet point. The next 3 are fairly straightforward. They're both mainly about administration and fees. The first one is the addition of a zoning certificate item in our current fee table. We have been charging for that. It's just that it's not actually listed in our fee table. The second bullet point is about, we have a fee we charge applicants for all zoning applications, and it's a standard fee, but occasionally those fees actually go over what we're charging, and so this would just allow us to get the overage. And then the third is the stenographic services. We are required to have a recording of all zoning meetings, and stenography is pretty critical in some of the more controversial ones, but it's very costly. We've already paid this fiscal year over $4,000 out of town funds to cover stenography for zoning cases. And we propose to make it like Planning Commission stenography in that the applicant is billed for that. Moving on to the next bullet point, non-conforming development. This is a little trickier. All expansion or alteration of non-conforming development, which is lots that do not conform to their zoning district, triggers a special use permit process, and special use permits trigger development plan review. So an applicant who maybe owns a lot and they want to move a lot line has to actually go for planning and then to zoning, and with all of their attorneys, surveyors, and such. And in review, we don't believe, and the Planning Commission shares this opinion, that there's a lot of planning value added there to justify the extra burden to the applicant and the extra cost. And of course, the zoning board always has the option to refer it to the Planning Commission if they feel like that's needed.
Okay.
The last bullet point, I think, yes, is probably the most complicated one, which is a reconfiguring of our accessory family dwelling units. Right now, we just have a couple of insertions in the zoning ordinance that are pretty basic, but state law changed in the last year. Previously, you could do an accessory unit for a disabled family member. They've expanded it to any family member over 62 years of age. So our goal with this was to kind of clarify the parameters by which we would view it, something to be an accessory dwelling unit, as opposed to somebody just trying to build an extra unit on their house, how we would know that would be happening. So without going into too much detail, I've outlined in the memo, we have some changes to the definitions and getting them very specific, and also outlining a process. How units could be built by right, how people could build them slightly differently with a special use permit, and how they could sort of decommission the unit once it's no longer occupied by a family member. So.
Okay, thank you. And I'm asking, what I see in generally under the subject is each one of these you've covered has been recommended by the Planning Commission.
That is correct.
That they think it's a good thing, all of these.
That's correct.
Every one.
Yes.
Because I earmarked each one, and each one's been recommended. Basically, there's 5 different, or is it 4 different groupings? But we're going to, I guess, open it up now, the public hearing on all of them before the council takes votes, I guess, individually. Is that how it would be done, Mr. Gorham, right?
I think that is appropriate, yes.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion? Thank you. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing, open up the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second, Mr. McGee? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we are in public hearing now on any of these proposed zoning changes, amendments, or new requirements. Either in favor of or against. Oh, yes, okay, I didn't see you. Come on forward, and well, that's my fault. And then name and address for the record, that's all.
Hi, Derek Schieffer from 4 Audubon Lane in Coventry. You guys have seen me up here before, and the very sensitive issue of the gun range, and kind of hoping to put this to bed, I think for the peace of mind for all the residents, the people that live out in RR3 and RR5. And I think if you guys would vote on it and approve or agree with what the Planning Commission said, you could probably get out of here a heck of a lot earlier tonight. And because I think there's probably about 20 people behind me that want to echo my sentiments in that. Even having the opportunity to create a commercial gun range in Western Coventry in RR3 and RR5 is really going to discourage, people from moving into the area. It's a quality of life issue. It's a safety issue. I mean, it's a peace of mind issue. I mean, I have kids. There's schools close by, and it's just not the place for it. I know that the applicant had done a lot of studies and presented a lot of evidence, and was saying that you couldn't hear it, that the gun range would not be any louder than a dog barking or a car backfiring. Well, I was there when they did that testing, and trust me, you can hear it. It sounds like you're being invaded. So I think that however it got as far as it did, I think the sentiment of the town, not only the people that live out that way, but there was a lot of support from people from different towns and from people within the town that it wouldn't have had a direct effect on. So I would just ask that you echo the sentiments of the Planning Commission. Let's change the zoning ordinance so we all don't have to live this through this again. I would think all you guys have enough on your plate right now with the sewers and everything else that if you put this issue to bed, it would probably lighten your load a lot. So I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, yes, ma'am. This is a gun range one.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
My name is Susan Paoletta, 4 Whistle Lane. Yes, everything that Derek said, I agree with. I just want to thank Carolyn Wells again and the town council for moving this forward. I know it's taken probably more time than I liked, but I totally appreciate that you are moving it forward. And as I've mentioned before in other public comments, it's your time to act. Please act on this tonight. Don't delay it. Don't kick the can down the road. You've heard from everyone. The taxpayers are upset. We're concerned residents. We don't want to be the next Sandy Hook. We don't want to be the next Parkland, Florida. Enough is enough. It's your time to act. We're tired of it. I'm begging you to do the right thing. Support these changes. Everybody has put in a lot of time and effort, and I'm just, please, move forward tonight. I have over 1,000 signatures, hand signatures, when we fought this back, when it was going forward. We had an I petition. There's like over 1,000 signatures on that also. I'll do them again if I need to. So please, please, move this forward, act the right way, do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Okay, the gentleman over there that we've heard from before. Come on up. Paul McGrath. Okay. And just for the record, name and address.
Good evening, Paul McGrath, 91 Galvingtown Road. I spent 4 months of researching gun ranges, and from all over the whole East Coast. And every single gun range that has been established, the local residents within a mile and a half radius cannot stand it. The noise is disruptive. I have nothing against guns. I love shooting a gun in appropriate places. You know, it's just not fair to a neighbor to have a cookout on a Saturday afternoon and have to listen to 40 or 50 guns going off. So please deny any future commercial outdoor gun ranges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Wayne DeLude, 26 Audubon Lane. I think you all know how I feel without the correspondence. Safety is the utmost issue. But also, last week I watched all of you struggle with trying to get our property tax value below the allowable limit. Now, we have a mechanism in our zoning regulation that would allow a gun range that would bring down our property values drastically. Now, that would bring down the town's revenue drastically. Do any of you see the warped dichotomy in all of that? You're trying to find change in the cushions last week, and this week you have an opportunity to, you know, do away with this, so please do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else on any of the matters? Mr. McGee?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Ms. Wells. I'm looking over at this first proposal, and make sure the mic's on. And it talks about the indoor archery ranges. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I don't understand all the R5, RR3. It states that there's no permission to except for GB, BP, and 11 and 12. I thought we were allowing indoor archery ranges. Looks to me, maybe I'm reading it wrong, because the resolution states that we are. But I don't know if I'm reading that chart correctly.
Well, you are allowing indoor archery ranges.
But it says an N, which means not allowed.
Wait, did you look all the way?
Page 106 of, I mean, you can. I got it right here if you want to look at it. It says indoor archery and gun ranges. It says not allowed, only except in 3 with a special use permit, or 4 areas.
Right, so that's correct. So it would only be allowed indoor archery and gun ranges in general business park, and the 2 industrial districts. So not in the residential districts.
Not in the residential areas. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I get confused when it has
yeah, it's very confusing.
Planning. Yep, and zoning.
Okay. Anyone else in the public? Public comment on any of these suggested changes to the zoning ordinances, or amendments, or new ordinances? Okay. Well, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now, Mr. Gorham,
Just
tell
to
us how
help
we.
out a little bit. Well,
Okay.
the first resolution is found at page 106 of your packet.
Okay.
I think that's the one.
Outdoor gun range.
Right. That's everything having to do with guns and arrows. Guns and archery, right? Guns and arrow.
All right, is that the one you have to excuse yourself from or not?
That's
Are we
a
voting
resolution.
on each individual bullet point that's there, or strictly
each.
on, you know?
Let me just see if
Each resolution.
the
which I think
resolution
there's
is
5 of them,
divisible.
isn't there?
Yeah,
There's
you could vote
5
by
total?
section if you want. The resolution at page 106 has an amendment to section G1, which pertains only to outdoor gun ranges and outdoor archery ranges. And then it has
Indoor and
an
outdoor,
amendment
correct.
at G3.
That's
So
all right, I'll remove myself from the whole one. If you're gonna take this one, I'll recuse myself.
it is
unfortunately,
divisible
for
if
this.
you want to vote on part of it.
Sorry, well, I mean, I could do you could vote on the outdoor archery range.
I don't think it's
which
gonna
is a
matter.
special use permit.
I really don't think it's gonna matter. I mean, you could.
It's probably not going to matter.
Probably not, but,
I don't think so.
but just for ease sake, I'll recuse myself from this particular
Okay.
Item here. You taking that one first?
I think we
Take that
should.
one
right?
first?
Yes,
Isn't that-
I've got all the.
Okay.
We'll stay in order. And,
Yes.
So the first one is, the resolution is on page 106.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay? What's that?
Are we with council commenting?
Oh, if we wanted to, yes, okay.
Oh,
All right.
if you want to. Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, couple of things about this, the matrix on page 106. Number 10, outdoor archery range. I think there was there was some confusion the night at planning. I mean, they got kind of all confused because this was ends and where it was going to go and everything. But I think the thing we have to look at is the word commercial. I want to change the outdoor archery range to ends in 5 and 3 because it says commercial, and commercial is not allowed by the comp plan in RR3 and RR5. So outdoor archery range does not fit RR3 and RR5, and I think those should be not allowed, just like the rest of outdoor gun range or the indoor archery range. When it comes to commercial, we are not a commercial two districts. And my reasoning behind that is the comp plan is what is our Bible for the town, and that is what the ordinances should follow. And if we put any kind of commercial in 3 and 5, we're going to have the same issues we had before. You've got traffic, you've got noise, you've got crowds. You know, outdoor archery range sounds like fun to me, but honestly, it can't go in 5 and 3 because it doesn't follow the comp plan.
So
We're
just-
agricultural.
Just to clarify the amendment, Member Carlson, you're talking about under G1.
G1, number 10, outdoor
number-
archery range.
So the S under RR5 and the S under
under
RR3,
RR3.
you're proposing an amendment to make each of those S's an N.
N, which is what I tried to do a few weeks ago, but we said tonight would be the night to do that, not
That's
before.
correct. The Zoning Enabling Act actually allows that. It requires us to put in the notice that amendments like this can be made at the meeting after
Yes.
the public hearing.
'Cause I thought I had to do it ahead of
perfectly
time. Okay.
in order making the amendment.
So,
Or proposing the amendment. So then if I
yes.
could just explain, I think the way that we always do it is the way we're going to do it with the Zoning Enabling Act. We're going to vote on the amendment first and then the resolution as a whole.
Changed or not changed?
Oh, no.
To the ends.
Well, we vote for the amendment first. The council votes on the amendment first, the amendment you just
Oh,
made.
okay, yes.
And then
In
if
the
it
form of a
carries,
motion.
then
Yeah.
as amended, we'll vote on it.
Should I
If
make
it
a
doesn't carry, then we vote on the, unless you have another amendment.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm fine with the rest of it.
Well, we'll
Should
do
I make an
amendments
emotion?
one at a time. We can
Yeah.
only do them one at a time.
Should I make a motion to amend?
Yes, I
Yes,
think you
okay,
did.
so okay, I made that motion.
Can I ask you, the reasoning is it doesn't match the comp plan because it's a special use permit anyway for outdoor
Right,
range.
but it is a commercial use, and commercial does not fit the comp plan for 3 and 5.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, there was a motion and second. I'd just like to ask Mrs. Wells, did they overlook that, or is it an argument on that, or is it like divided? Excuse me?
I don't have my existing zoning ordinance
Okay.
on me, but I think that's actually
I
a
understand.
carryover from the prior zoning ordinance.
All right.
But it's, you know, it doesn't explicitly say no commercial in the rural residential districts. It just says that the rural residential districts need to maintain their rural character. So it's, you know, how you interpret
So
that
it's 6 of one,
is-
half a dozen of the other.
And nobody actually brought the comp plan up that night.
No.
No.
But if it doesn't affect,
Commercial, I guess is the
Yeah,
word.
I mean, an outdoor archery range, I mean, if someone owns 20 acres up in, you know, that's why it was an issue. I mean, who are we, I'm not talking about.
But the word is commercial, I think. Make it,
Well,
making
and Carrie,
money.
you know, say for instance, Town Farm Road or Narrow Lane, and somebody has 20 acres, and it's a 1.5 at maximum lane width, car width, you know, for that lane, and you've got a archery tournament that day, and you've got food trucks, and you've got traffic, and you've got all the rest of it that goes along with it, that could be a problem for us out there.
They could still have private
Yeah.
on their own
Yeah.
property, and they could have 100 people come. All right, but it's not commercial. Right. All right. All right. All right. I think we've hammered on this one enough. Excuse me. I think the council's talking. We've closed public hearing. Well, I'll decide when we call the vote, thanks. All right, I guess we're ready for the vote. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
All right, you recuse. All right, so pass. Next.
Well, no. Next, now we're going to vote on the resolution as a whole.
Okay, now the whole thing. All right, motion to approve it in total.
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that one got approved.
The next resolution, you should refer to page 109 of the package.
109.
So this is complete, this one here.
That one's
And this, to just refresh your recollection a little bit, this is about the I can't think of the word. The
abutting
notice to abutters. It increases it significantly.
on the distance and the different areas.
Thank you.
All right, it's getting late. Do we have a motion to approve this one then? And you don't have to recuse, right?
No,
Do we have a-
it was only the gun range. This
No,
doesn't,
public hearing, we closed on all of them. We had public hearing on everyone, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
closed on
Did everybody
everything.
understand that? Because I
Public
thought you were
hearing.
doing it
No,
right.
it was
No,
for
we did
everything.
it total.
It was for everything.
I repeated it several
You all
times.
get that?
It was for
All right,
both, that's all.
so we're here to vote. Do I have a motion to approve this one? This is the one on page 108, and recommended the changes, expanding notices
No,
for
109.
109, it starts at 108.
And these all
Notice
came
to
back
abutters,
favored?
public hearings, and number 109, and then the radiuses are on page 110. Do we go to 111? And 111. So do I have a motion to approve this one? Do I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second. Discussion.
All right, discussion?
Discussion. Okay, so on this one, there's a problem with the public notice shall be given at least 14 days prior to the date of hearing in a newspaper. And in addition, the appellant or applicant shall give written notice by certified mail at least 10 days before such hearing. Excuse me. That is nowhere near enough time. Wherever in here it says that we have 14 days prior or 10 days prior, I can tell you lots of people don't get that notice in time. And it isn't just because some of us go to Scalings to pick up our mail out there in the western end. It's because you have to actually go back to the post office and sign for the letter. And it's return receipt requested. So I would like to change both of those wherever they show, either the 14 days or the 10 days, 21 to 30 days. I'd go 30. I think a month is not unreasonable, Caroline, because you've got all your paperwork and your scheduling, right?
Right.
So a month ahead, is that reasonable, that you know a month ahead you're putting them on the agenda?
Well, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but we have a set schedule of when we know, applications have to be certified complete, and then we back them up.
Yeah.
And I have moved that out to about a month. I don't know what the impact is of expanding the public notice. That's really more of a burden to the applicant than to staff.
I'll tell you, you know.
This is the state's standard for noticing.
Well,
that
I
we're just
understand that, but it
replicating.
hasn't worked really well in town. Whether it's a gun range or a wind turbine or a solar power plant, or even somebody putting up a shed and needing a variance, you know, it hasn't worked real well to only give 10 days notice. I mean, say you're on vacation, you know, you leave on Saturday, you come back,
if you think
and
that's going to cure the problem, I think, you know,
I think it's a step. I'm not
think
sure
people
it'll
need to
ever
own
cure
their
the
mail,
problem.
too, but,
Yeah. And sometimes the mail's slow. Depending on where they're mailing it from Providence to Coventry could take a couple days or could be there the next day. I don't think we're doing our residents justice by having such a short period of time to notify.
I honestly, I've never heard of that long of a notice. I don't
21
know I don't know
days?
the impact. I honestly don't know the impact of it. 21 days may be more reasonable than a full month.
Well, that's still 3 weeks. That would be good. Better than
I mean, I guess if
what we've got
it
now.
creates catastrophe, we could just bring it right back here and look at it again. So.
And it's on the applicant. I mean, the applicant knows what they want to do.
It is. I think on the staff end, what it does is create impatience on part of the applicant on when they can get on an agenda. It just kind of creates a little bit of an additional consideration for them,
But they're already impatient.
that's the truth.
We all know that one, so. So that would be my amendment, to go to 21 days notice for both newspaper and mail. And I'd like that in the form of a motion to change that.
And in 10 days, you want to leave the same?
No, I want to go 21.
Both?
That's important. That's the certified mail.
So
Yeah.
the other one's 14 days, so you want to change them both to 21 days?
Yes, I would like to. I know people aren't getting these notices in a timely manner to show up for the meetings. So that's my motion. That's my motion.
A second.
Thank you.
Well,
I mean, it's,
I don't know about 21.
I've just got a question of the solicitor. Would that, seeing that this is the state standard or a standard type of sentiment, would this cause any problems
More stringent than
with
state.
with the state law?
I don't think there is a state standard for how many days. I think that is left to the town council in enacting the zoning ordinance. So, for example, the choice of 14 days and 10 days, respectively, in the current ordinance under Section 420, I think you can change that. In other words, you can pick a number higher than what we have. The Enabling Act doesn't specify how many days. I think it leaves that up to the town council.
Does that include, there's always been the question, are there 14 days, are they Monday through Friday, or are they Monday through Sunday?
Well, it's 14 days.
Can we clarify that? It's 14 days?
I don't want to make it any more complicated.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm trying to say, is we've always had that question. Do weekends count? Because you don't get mail sometimes on Sunday.
They do count, unless
Okay,
specified
just wanna clarify
otherwise.
that.
That's the only way to construe the statute.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any problems with 21 days?
No, I'm ready.
All right. You?
Yeah, 21 for both of them?
21 for both, all right.
Okay.
Get this done.
Yeah, and if it becomes...
All right. All right, so then the motion was made and seconded to change it on page 109 to 21 days. Public notice shall be given at least 21 days prior to the date of the hearing in newspaper or of general circulation, and then also, in addition, the appellant or applicant shall give written notice by certified mail at least 21 days before such hearing to all property owners of record within notice radius, specified below, excluding road right of ways. All right, that's
And
the
also
motion.
on page 110 for variances. Same thing. I'm sorry, same thing on page 110 under variances.
Is that any different as well? Is that going to cause a problem?
No.
No? Is it a negative? Okay.
It's for
All right.
special use permits or for variances.
Okay, so 21 days on page 110-2 then. I think that's still the motion and still the second?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's approved too then. And
That
we're,
was only the amendment.
what's that? Oh,
was
yeah,
only the
that's the only amendment. Now we got to approve it as amended.
I make a motion, we approve that Article 4 zoning, sections 423 to 424 as amended.
Okay, and do I have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Hold on.
Oh,
Just
wait a
quick
minute.
question on
Question on this one.
On the notice radius, is that for strictly special use permits, or is that on, a variance? And, if somebody in a private capacity wants to do a little something, not, obviously not commercial, but something on their property,
It's all appeals.
Yeah.
All appeals.
That's,
And on applications.
Yeah.
okay. So for everything, so if someone is going for, a tiny little variance on their property, you're gonna have to, notify 2,000 feet out, in the western end for a little,
Well, that could be two
so-
neighbors, three neighbors.
Yeah, but I mean, the tiniest, was there something else you were talking about, that a planning review of something, on here?
If they don't have to go to planning,
There
they
we
just
go.
go to zoning.
If they don't have to go to.
No, that's coming. I think
That's the for instance he's
Yeah.
looking at. Like, if they don't go to
Yeah.
planning, they just go to zoning.
Right, but I'm saying, this is not strictly for commercial type of applications then. This is for any application, they've got to go out to this radius of people for even the smallest thing on someone's property, as opposed to it was 200 feet for, prior to, is that what it was prior? Everything was 200 feet?
Yeah.
And so, private property, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then we have a motion and a second on changing those three different, 2 pages, 21 days. And I guess that's it, page 110 and 109. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's been approved
One
officially.
one opposed.
Okay, one opposed, 4-1. All right, next, we have, the resolution is on page 113, and it trickles over to 114, and I guess also 115. And 116. Any motion to approve on this one?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this one? These are on the fees.
These fees, have they changed? I mean, I didn't see the old list. Have
Have
they
they increased?
additions?
Same?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, and all we're doing is that stenographer, is that what they're adding that?
Stenographer?
20, okay, well, that's the other one.
Okay, then, on this particular proposed amendment zoning ordinance, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that also passed.
118 is the next.
118, page 118 is the next proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. And it goes 119, page 120, and page 121.
This is the accessory dwelling unit. It complies with state law. It's just an update.
Just an update, and it complies with state law. Okay. Anyone wants to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on these?
I have a question.
Question?
Caroline, you know what planning and zoning went through with that couple that were doing the accessory dwelling that was the big, I didn't understand why they couldn't give the mother-in-law privacy. The planning commission said they couldn't put up a door, but wouldn't a door not only give privacy to grandma, but be a fire code issue? Because I'm looking here and it says, no exterior entrances shall be added absent a compelling need, such as code compliance or to accommodate. So I'm wondering when they discussed this, if that wasn't...
We didn't have any of the structure at that point, so it was sort of a loose conversation. But if they were to come back and we had this in place, and they could demonstrate that it was a code issue, the issue is that they could pursue the permit by right. But if it turned out that it wasn't a code issue, but they really thought for whatever reason they needed another ingress and egress, they could still do it. They would just have to go through a special use permit process.
And what about an interior door, though? Because sometimes you just don't want the little ones.
That's not ingress.
That's
no, it's not.
That
but
doesn't count.
But that was something that they discussed, Nick, that they didn't want them putting a door up at the end of the breezeway, which I didn't think was a good idea.
Yeah, well, that's why we wrote this, though, is because that was such a long, unstructured conversation that we, to put some parameters around it might have been, a little more productive.
So there's nothing in here that talks about an interior door, though, right?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So if somebody comes back again, is that going to be?
It shouldn't be. The key issue is how do we know they're not just, putting in a whole unit and renting it out? That's the big deal.
I understand that.
And so that's where the exterior door becomes an issue. What they do on the interior, I think we're less concerned with.
Okay, because that whole interior door was a big discussion.
It was.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Did I get a motion on these?
Yeah, you got a
motion. A motion and second?
Yep.
On this particular one, page 118, 119, 120, 121. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Page 123.
Okay, and the last one, page 123, kicks over to 124. A motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second on this one?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Complete. Okay. All right, before we wrap it up, we have general public comment.
I don't know.
General public comment, yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
Chris Hallstrom, 4 Ridgewood Trail, Green. To say that after listening to Citron Cooperman's presentation that I'm grossly disgusted would also be a gross understatement, similar to the financial issue that was in the sewer budget. I hope you all have the same takeaway, that it's an absolute disaster. couple of things I wanted to talk about with regard to their presentation, and then I had a couple other comments. First is a question regarding the general fund and the fact that the budget is coming up for the financial town meeting. My question, and I heard Mr. Gorham saying this earlier, that there has been no appropriation, or there's no appropriation in the current budget being presented for any payments to the sewer fund. Can I go on that and say that there hasn't been in the past either? And you don't have to answer that. I'm just, has there ever been, I realize you don't have the requirement to answer, but if you have the answer, that's great. But if it, has there ever been an appropriation in the budget for the sewer fund for the general voter, financial town meeting?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Not since I've lived here since 1994. I can't remember one.
Okay, and that's fair, and I appreciate that. Obviously, we would ask the financial manager, but we have our interim, and I don't know if he would know either. The reality is that if it's never been appropriated for, under what authority was funds used from the general fund to pay any shortcomings of the enterprise fund? And again, I don't expect any answers, but that is something that you definitely need to look into, whether it's an interim town manager looking into it or having the auditors look into it. If there was never any authority to do so, how was it possibly done? And then what is the remedy to that to the taxpayers? Because clearly there was never a consent, and that was never approved. One of the other questions I had was a lot of the numbers and a lot of the facts that Citrin Cooperman talked about today, they couldn't tie things out, they couldn't justify a particular number, so they relied on the audited financial statements. But also in the same vein, we heard multiple times that the audited financial statements previously in the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years, had prior period adjustments, meaning that the prior year something had been missed under audit. They never caught on to the commingling of funds. They never noticed that the debt from the West Warwick facility was not included in the financial statements. They never noticed any of these transfer payments and that they didn't question any of them. To me, those are material errors in a financial statement. Now, I don't know if they're a margin of materiality, but certainly when we're looking at the deficit that that fund has, I'd say that that's pretty material. So there's material misstatements in the financials that they rendered as clear. And they've been doing an audit every single year. I think it's time for them to go.
Thank you. That's it. You have 3 minutes, aren't we? No? Yeah. Thank you. That's it.
No,
Next.
I'm not finished, sir.
We are. It's 3 minutes.
No, there's actually that. And I'll tell you what, if you can tell me where that's in the statute, where I have a limited amount of time.
That's the council decision. All right, so the next one wants a public comment before we adjourn? Yes, go ahead, ma'am. All right, now I've got the...
He has trouble breathing. I'm just asking that he go first here. Thank you.
For the record, that's absurd.
Okay, fine. All right, for the record, because trouble breathing, and then that nice lady in back there. Go ahead. Make sure you keep the timer going, Nick. All right, it's getting late. All right. Go ahead. Name and address for the record, sir.
I've been here before, and I've spoken to the council before. Right. I want to thank the gentleman behind you. My name is Jeff Mastrobono.
Thank you.
7225 Patriot Way in West Greenwich, Rhode Island. I don't know how I can possibly say all that I have to say in 3 minutes. I guess I'll just get down to the basics. I guess everybody knows that I have a 2-year life expectancy from the mycotoxins, gases coming through the mold from Brady Sullivan Harris Mills. I don't stand alone. 100 people now have been confirmed with the mold pathogens in their body. Nicholas Gorman and Council President Shibley are preventing the Harris Mill Brady Sullivan discussion from being put back on the agenda. I'm wondering what you have to hide, Mr. Gorham.
Okay.
What you have to hide. Please don't shut me up.
Excuse me. Let me straighten you out.
You going to interrupt me? Like you did Senator Reptakis, our hero and champion?
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead, you're
wanted-
talking to a dead man walking, Mr. Shibley.
Okay, I was not here when you came to the council last time. I was in Virginia Beach.
But you're the one that said you know adversely in regards to the sick tenants. Are you a doctor? Do you know adversely more than a pulmonologist and environmental? No, you made a statement. You said you know adversely.
I guess we're
to
gonna
add
have
insult to
have
injury.
this gentleman removed now. Okay, you didn't listen.
What were you
that's
saying?
All right. Yes. Or at least sit down because you're breathing. And well, next person,
I'm
next
okay
man
with
up.
my breathing. I want to listen to you now. Let's
go.
There is not going to be any attacks on individuals. That's our rules for public comment until we stop public comment. And it's not any attacks on individuals. I don't even know you, sir, and I thank you. You called names and you called people. That's public attack on individuals, all right? So you want a general statement, and then we can take your notes and get back to you, all right? It's late, sir.
Are you asking me to make a general statement?
That's it. Okay, thank you. Ma'am, you're next. Let's keep this to content as long as we have public comment. I understand there's an issue, and we also have other issues regarding that issue. But go ahead, ma'am. Your name and address, please.
Shannon McGrath, 91 Calvintown Road, Coventry, Rhode Island. I realize we have a lot of issues in the town, but I would just like to thank everyone on the council tonight for finally passing that there's no outdoor gun range, and I thank each and every one of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other public comment on a positive note? Yes, ma'am, way in the back. Oh, okay, Mr. Palin, you're next. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ryan McKinnon. I am at 212 Sandy Lane in Warwick, and I'm here due to the fact that Harris Mill has not been on the agenda. I have individually emailed all of you guys pictures of my son and myself with the rashes and the hives that we have gotten from Harris Mill. I'm just really disappointed because you guys all say that nothing's happening at Harris Mill, and I look at my poor little son and his hives that he has on his face, and to hear from you guys that nothing's happening and no one's commenting to you guys, I didn't get an email back from any of you guys, which hurt me really badly because you guys keep saying that nobody's commenting to you guys and nobody's talking to you guys. Well, I came forward and I did talk to you guys, and I sent pictures and everything of me and my son, and nobody replied to me. So I'm just wondering why it is not going to be on the agenda, because it is a real issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Palin?
Frank Palin, 47 Breezy Lake Drive, Coventry, Rhode Island. And thank you, Mr. Gorham, for asking that the sewer budget be tabled. I'm sure some of it was in response to the letter I forwarded everybody this morning. But what I want to go to next is actually something Mr. Gorham said about a lot of the things being broken within the sewer program. I would more liken it to Humpty Dumpty just falling off the wall, and all the king's men are never going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Now, with the financial town meeting coming up, there is a proposed 2.7% increase in the tax base and in the budget. Do you have a contingency plan when this does not pass? Because there are so many angry people in town. There is a trust issue with the council, and it's basically because of secrets. This has been going on for 40 years. No one has seen anything anywhere in any budget. You admitted it yourself, Mr. Gorham. So now the community basically feels, because of the secrets, we've been lied to. That's the way I feel, and I know that's the way many people feel. So I anticipate the budget going down to defeat at the annual meeting. So what I'm suggesting, respectfully suggesting to you today, is start planning the contingency fee. And it may be a good place to start by contacting West Warwick and terminating the sewer contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? General public comment. Okay, Senator.
Thank you. Leonidas Reptakis, 2080 Nooseneck Hill Road. Mr. President, members of the Town Council, I was here before you on April 9th and again on April 23rd, and tonight asking again that we place the Harris Mills Brady Sullivan issue on the agenda as it was removed on March 23rd. I also sent you an email and a letter, and have not received a response, and also an outline, recent media article that outlines every agency from the EPA, state fire marshals, building codes, health department, and other agencies that have confirmed that there's issues at Harris Mills. There's been a lot of media attention, probably on a weekly basis and not even on a daily basis. So I think it's time for this town council to put the Harris Mills Brady Sullivan issue on the agenda at your earliest convenience. And I think we owe it to the residents of those individuals that reside in that complex and also that have been affected by health issues. That's number one. Number two, I was here when Citrin Cooperman gave a briefing, and they said that the hands of the council will be tied by the 6 pieces of legislation, but the General Assembly is acting to protect the ratepayers and the taxpayers of this town. That's why we took forth to ask the Auditor General to come into this community to do a thorough audit, and we believe that the General Assembly is also doing their due diligence to, again, protect the ratepayers. So also, I'm not sure when the Auditor General is going to be completed, so I also would like to ask this council to place a lot of weight on the state that is conducting this thorough investigation on the Coventry sewer program. And thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Delibris, 49 Reed Avenue. I will not say any names, but I will say, if you don't want anyone to say anything disparaging about you, remember that your mic is on, because I'm not a freaking jerk.
I don't think I ever said that, ma'am.
You did last week. You did.
All right. Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else before we adjourn? Yeah, the lady that raised her hand, the blonde here.
Hi, it's been a long evening. I'm here again asking you about putting Brady Sullivan issue on the agenda. We received a great letter of support from Councilman Carlson, and we thought, maybe we're having some impact in getting the town involved. It's going to turn into a mess, guys. You have to pay attention. You have to take some step towards standing up to whatever's going on with Brady Sullivan. You have to represent your constituents. There's families with small children, and when you read the lead compliance, it says no one under 6 should be exposed to the levels that they've measured. Well, a woman that lives in the apartment complex that has a number of children under 6, but no one told her that the levels were dangerous for young children. So I ask you again, please look into it and please help us. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kevin Snow, 36 Edward Street. I simply ask for one thing. Mr. Shibley, your resignation. You're an embarrassment to this town. You're an embarrassment to the people.
You sit here and you contradict. You're very hypocritical, saying you don't want us to say disparaging things. Last week, check the video. It's all
Sir,
over. No, I'm not going to shut
every time you
up.
come,
It's on YouTube.
You have the same.
Yeah, well,
attitude.
imagine that.
All
Well,
right.
if you left,
Guess
then
what?
maybe I'd say something different.
Thank you.
You're the common denominator.
Thank you.
Get out of here, because we want you out of
Good
here.
night. All right. Motion to adjourn, I think, is a good time. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Have a good evening.
Mike's are on.